All right, so this is going to be the SWOOD Design training. We're basically going to have the next 2 weeks of this. We're going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it's going to be, I know for you guys at Liberty, it's going to be a lot like the last one. We'll do a couple hours, do a short break, and then we'll come back and finish out, and then be done by, I guess you guys are all on the same time. Should be done at noon, 8 to noon for all you guys, right?
Sounds good.
Great. All right, so that's going ahead.
Where are we getting the materials from? The
Uh,
download.
I I didn't I wasn't able to put that file I wanted to send in the materials because it's bigger than they allow. So I'm doing a WeTransfer. You should have it in about like 10 seconds.
Okay.
It should email it. So it's sent to all four of you guys, and that's the data directory we're going to just set for this one, just so we're all on the same page. And then we should be good. Okay, so that is sent now. Right. Is everyone seeing that email?
Yeah, it's downloading now.
Okay. Yeah, it'll probably just take a minute. It's about a gig, so yep.
Or should we install that at?
Uh, I'll go into that in just a second. I just need to. SolidWorks is just being a little slow on me. Okay, so I'm just gonna close that, and then I'm gonna share my screen here. So I'll share my SolidWorks screen there. Okay, so everyone can see that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, so you guys should pretty much be downloading the stocks with data right now. And then just out of curiosity, what version of SolidWorks are you guys all in?
25.
Yep.
26.
Okay. So I'll just have to make sure, because I just switched to 26. So if I need to send you guys any files, I'll just make sure I save them in 25, just so everything's backwards compatible. And we should be good to go with that. All right, so first thing we'll want to do, once everyone has that downloaded, is that still running or is it good?
I'm good.
Good. Good
Okay,
here.
so we'll take that file we set now. What we're going to do is come into the tools, should be familiar for a lot of you. We'll come down to SWOOD Design. Riley, I believe your SWOOD Design settings works. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we can get into that at least. Yeah, so we can run through this window just to kind of explain the settings first off. So the most important thing here is going to be the top line, and that's what we're going to work with first. So I'm going to switch mine along with you guys to have the same data so that we're all looking at the same thing. So if we click on this, we can just hit the folder icon. That'll bring up a file explorer. We can set the data location here. So I'm going to use the same folder as you guys. So that'll be that one. So yeah, the main thing with this is that we want to just make sure we choose the folder that's one level above what you see here. So the one above all these subfolders, starting with aggregates, DAT, machining, we'll want to make sure that we chose just the one above it. So I just make sure just left click it once and then say select folder, and that way you're good.
Is that the
Okay,
thing we
hold
just
on.
downloaded, or
Yeah, that should be, so you'll just need to extract that file because I sent a zipped one, and then set that folder once it's extracted as your data directory.
Okay, I currently have a SWOD data dash Liberty Coach from our last training.
Yep.
Is this going to create a new folder, something titled differently, or is it the same?
Yeah, so this one's going to be the same. I just wanted to have a stock one that we all are using at the same time, so everyone's seeing the same things in their library.
so drag it into that folder that we were using the first time, or what?
Well, you guys can save the folder wherever makes sense for you, and then we'll just reference it from here. So it could be on your desktop, could be on some kind of local drive, anything like that. So I just have mine saved on a separate drive here, and then I just select it from in here, and you guys will just select it from wherever you save it to. So
It's just the folder right above all the main folders.
yes, so yeah, if I pull up File Explorer just to have a look, you can see here. Let me go into where I had it. So I had it in here, and basically this should be the folder you guys see once you extract it. Should be that one there, and we just want to click it once and then say select folder. The issue is if we choose the wrong folder, it's not going to be able to access the right library components, so we're going to want to make sure we pick this level. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, mine
Yes.
says it's got about 2 minutes left of copying the data over.
Okay. We'll just let that run, and then we'll select it, and I guess meanwhile I can just do the demonstration of what happens if we don't set the data right, just so you know what to look for if you're having issues with it. So while we're waiting for that, what I'm going to do is just to demonstrate, I'm going to come into my desktop, and I'm just going to make a new empty folder. I think I've done this with you guys before, but we'll point it out so everyone's on the same page. So I'm just going to call this one not SWOD data. Obviously, there's nothing in here. And you can see if I try and set that folder I just made that's empty as my data location. So that would be this guy here. We select that and then say OK. It's going to do some weird things to the folder. So that was, where did that go? Right here. So now if I open up that folder again, you can see it put all these files inside of it. And basically, if we don't choose the right folder or an empty folder or anything like that, it's going to drop these inside of whatever we picked. So it's important to pick the right one, or else, otherwise you're just going to kind of end up with a mess of these empty subfolders. it's going to clutter up your files and make it kind of confusing. So that's just why we want to make sure we go in and just pick the right level when we do the data directory. So you can see I set that one there, but now everything over here pretty much is empty because there was nothing in there. So that's just something to look out for. If your files ever get like all kinds of duplicate folders like this, it's probably because at some point the wrong level folder was picked for the data directory at some point, and it's going to drop all these inside of it. So you kind of end up with like a mess of empty folders. So just something to look out for if that ever happens. And yeah, so I'll just go ahead and set mine back to the original location here. Okay, and then we'll just kind of go through and explain what the rest of this stuff is. Okay, you guys can just let me know when you're ready with the files and everything.
Mine's
So I'm
ready.
gonna,
I think mine's ready too.
okay,
Yep.
so if we want to just go ahead and get those set, then we can go ahead and just move through the rest of the options menu here.
How do we originally get in this menu? I clicked the OK button, so I didn't realize we were going to do a bunch more things. You're up in, was it insert or tools?
Yeah, so it's
Oh, I
tools,
see.
you'll access it, and then we'll come down to SWOOD Design
SWOOD
since that's what
Design
we're going to be
Settings.
working
Yep.
with, and then, yep,
Perfect.
settings.
Okay.
So that is where you'll, mainly the main thing with this is you'll be setting your data here. Usually it's kind of a set it and forget it thing. You
Okay.
guys shouldn't need to be changing it, but that's how we do it there. All right, so yeah, it should just be wherever you saved it, and then you should see just the end of the file location there, just saying like it is on mine. Everything okay with that so far?
Yep.
All right. Everyone was able to get that set okay?
Yep.
All right, sounds
Yep.
good. Yep. Riley and Kurt, you're all good?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, next line, a little less consequential, but working directory is just kind of where SWOOD might save some temporary working files or anything like that while you're working. Most things are going to get saved, or pretty much almost everything is saved in the data directory. So second location doesn't really matter too much. You can just set that to any local folder you like, anything like that. I just have mine set to just a folder called SWOOD projects. You can do the same if you want, but it's really whatever you want. Could just be like a folder on your desktop or whatever, something like that. Do you guys? I'm curious if it comes with. Does it set a folder automatically, or is that something that has to be filled in when you first start?
Mine just picked the same thing we had last time, a folder I set
Okay.
up on my desktop.
Yeah, I figured.
I think when I installed the software, it asked for that, so I'd set that up ahead, and we're going to be having our data dictionary out on our server.
Okay.
And I believe when I set it up, it puts all those subfolders in. Yeah. So right now on our server, we got underneath SWOD data, we've got the aggregate, DAT, machining, what have you. So it sounds like we'll have to move all this down one and put our data folder above it, like you're saying.
Okay. Yeah, it should, because it should just be one above that one that shows
Yeah, because when you initial
at
setup,
aggregates.
yeah, aggregate, stat, machining, all that populates when you load the software. But what you're saying is our data needs to be at one level above this, so we'll have to put a new folder in
Correct.
there.
Yeah, and I mean, whenever they send the data folder, it should be pretty much like the one I just sent, like the stock one. I believe it's the same. And then Alex, were you able to get something in the working directory there?
Oh, yes, I was. I just made something temporary on my documents for now. Just to dump
Okay,
stuff in there.
sounds good. So we'll just keep moving through here. Most of it's pretty self-explanatory. So I just have mine to use the SolidWorks language. Obviously, you can choose whatever you want. Debug mode, you guys shouldn't need to use. One quirk with it, basically what it'll do is kind of show in a little window kind of what processes are running whenever you do a command or something like that. So it just gives a little more information as to what's going on if you're, you know, in my shoes, like troubleshooting stuff or something like that. I'll use it sometimes. But also, if any of you guys are colorblind, it actually changes some of the colors of like different objects on the screen. So that's something you can run if like the colors aren't working out for you. I don't know if that applies to anyone, but it's something you could do. Nobody colorblind?
I have a
No.
red deficiency.
Okay.
Slightly, but it doesn't seem to be an issue in SolidWorks, so it's
Okay.
good to know.
That's good. I know. Yeah, that was a interesting support case we had where someone was like, "Oh, can you change the colors? I can't see them." And turns out debug mode will do it. It'll just display things a little differently. So
It's good to know.
uh, XML counters directory, that shouldn't be anything we need to mess with. That's kind of just customizing some configuration files. Um, yeah, I know this was an issue with some of you guys before, so we have the option to toggle metric on and off here, so you can set it how you wish there. Uh, and then, yeah, hide units, however you want it to show up, it'll just show the unit symbol after if you want it or not. Reset command manager, that shouldn't be anything you need to touch unless there's maybe a problem with uh, how your SWOOD stuff is working. And then same thing with report configuration file. We shouldn't need to mess with that. There is a default configuration file for reports right now. If you do end up with a custom report, we will put like a custom file in here now. But more recently, we have the option to do system report, which we'll probably have time to show a little later in the training. But that's basically a more customizable report that's like web-based, where we can pretty easily go in and modify the data in there and how it's displayed. So most most people we're working with are using that now. So that's probably what we'll get into more. But yeah, there's some options there. If we click on the wheel here, we can just go into some quick options for the system report here. I'm just going to make sure that we have it turned on here. Yeah, and it may ask you this. May want you to just upgrade version to the most current version. I think it's asking me because I recently upgraded SolidWorks. So I'm just going to say yes to make it to the most recent version. And then it should pull up a window kind of like this here, where we can do some kind of back end stuff on the system report. Most things you can do in the system report itself. So the main thing we're going to want to do with this is just make sure where it says generate system report that it's checked so that it'll come up when we pull up our reports here. So we'll just go ahead and set that as checked for now and hit the green check mark there. And yeah, this one's pretty self-explanatory. We can check this if we want to show any report errors that come up, if they happen to. And then below that, we'll just go into just some basic design options here. So most of these are pretty much the same thing. They'll just have some checkboxes for how we want things to be displayed. So yeah, I don't really mess with currency too much on my end, so I haven't changed it from euros, but you guys can set it to whatever you want. If you think you're gonna kind of like use some costing stuff in your reporting, you can set that there. This one we'll want to leave unchecked for now, and then yeah, these other two should just be checked as standard.
I don't have any of those selections there under my design.
Does the main come up?
We're on global variables. You got system, then you got design. It says process bomb. And then I go to cutting pattern with a lot of options below that.
Are you in the design settings or the cam settings? I wonder if they're different. I think that sounds like some cam stuff. So it should be the one under tools and then SWOOD Design.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes up different than this.
Wait a minute. Oh, okay, I got it. I was one level
Okay.
back in there. All right.
Okay. So yeah, most of these we'll just leave as standard. Assembly copy is basically something they added for some people who had like drawings associated with their parts. And basically it added an option not to search for the drawing if there's one associated with it, which just speeds up like loading times a lot. And that was an issue with some people having some performance issues, so they added this option. So don't search would be the fastest thing, and the one at the bottom with like root folder and subdirectories would be the most time consuming. So, I mean, if it doesn't make a difference to you, you can choose whatever you want. I just have mine set to don't search just so things run the fastest. And then we'll come in and we'll kind of explain what each of these things are as we go through it, but these are kind of the different aspects of SWOOD design itself. So frames we'll get into, but basically we have the option to turn descriptions on and off. I just have mine set to off right now. Same thing with SWOOD boxes, which are like components that we'll add inside of frames. So yeah, we can check if we want descriptions or if we want components highlighted when we select it. I'll just leave those off for now. So same thing with panels. And then we have some options here for edge bands and profiles if we want to add in any extended properties. So basically you could add, something like, if you want to add like a supplier information or something like that, you can make a custom property here. So we could just do an example. Oh, that's hard to read, but okay. So I'm going to type supplier there, and basically we can select the type of parameter we want. So it could be a string, which is like a bit of text, which you'd probably do for supplier. You could do integer for number. Decimal will be a decimal number, or just a Boolean, yes, no. So, so I don't know what a supplier would be, like Wilson Art or something. You could put that in. And yeah, basically you could have an option to select that in your properties of edge bands now if you wanted to. So if I say okay to that, then when we go into setting up our edge band, that'll be an extra property that we can add if we'd like to. So it's basically the same thing with profiles as well. So do you guys use edge bands in your guys' stuff usually?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's something we'll get into. And then profiles kind of act similarly to edge bands, where it's basically just a shape applied to, say, like an edge of a panel or something like that. Is that something that you guys would use, where you like profile the edge of a panel?
Like shaker doors and like apply panels and stuff.
It's a good question. I don't know if it would be used for a shaker door, really. I'm thinking more like maybe on like the outside of it, like if you had like a slab door or something with like maybe like an edge pull profile on it or something, you might use something like that. Or even if you just like do like a round over on the CNC or something like that, that could be something handled by profiles as well.
Yeah, maybe our solid surface. That's really the only thing we probably put profiles on.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll look at profiles a little bit, just to show kind of how that works. But basically, it's just an edge treatment for like that edge of a panel, basically, where we can add a shape to it, pretty much. So, all right. So yeah, that just gives you another option to add any extended properties if you'd like to. So that's going to work the same way in this one. We'll just go through here. Okay, so the libraries is kind of what's going to show up in this right panel over here. And basically I have it selected to just show the texture of any material that's in the library, so that'll pop up. I'll be able to show you guys that in a second once I close this, but and this one I don't usually have checked. We can leave it off. But basically you can use the little funnel thing up here, the filter thing, to like search inside of your library. And this just gives you a different view to search in there. And then under that, I don't know if any of you guys use SolidWorks PDM. There just is a option to show your variable descriptions there. Is that something any of you guys use?
We have it, but it's not set up yet.
Okay. And then one last thing that I'll show here is the SWOD center. So if you come all the way down to that, you should just have the option to turn it on and off. So what I would do for now is have it, we'll turn it on because that's something we'll look at after. You shouldn't see this option for SWOD Center service. That should only be if you have the license for SWOD Center. I don't know if we guys had that for you guys.
I have that option.
Yeah, mine has it too.
What option is that?
Okay.
Center on and off?
So that's basically just another level where you can kind of customize SWOOD Center more, and you have like access to basically like services from SWOOD to help you set up SWOOD Center as well.
I don't have that option.
I wonder, it could just be because there's licenses associated with that, so you may just not have licenses for everyone on SWOOD Center. It might just be one or two. But really, you should only need one of those if you guys are all working together. But yeah, SWOOD Center is something we'll get into. Basically, it's like kind of adds an extra level of customization inside of SWOOD Design where you can kind of add your own custom parameters and properties and stuff. So say like we end up designing a cabinet or something like that, we could add, let's say, a property or a parameter, let's say, to control like the side the hinges are on and maybe how many shelves you have, things like that. We can also control the size of the cabinet really easily. And that basically, rather than having to go in and like edit the cabinet, it's right there on the left side of your screen. So something you can change really quickly. So yeah, that pretty much goes through all the SWOOD design options. Any questions on anything in there so far? Anyone?
No.
All right, all clear. Okay. So yeah, once we have that data set, which is going to be the main thing we're looking to do with this, we'll hit the green check mark there. And since I just turned on my SWOOD Center, that's what just popped up here on mine. So that's the one with the little gear icon. So we'll get into that a little later after we set up some stuff in SWOOD Design first. So I'm going to come into the one that kind of looks like a box with a D on the corner. That's going to be our SWOOD library. Is everyone able to see that tab there?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So yeah, first thing we're going to do when we come into this, we're just going to kind of go through what each of these buttons are, and then we'll kind of get more in depth on what each of those do as we go forward. Okay. So what I'm going to do is let's just start by clicking the third button over, which is going to be our panels library. And you should basically see something that looks like this. Does everyone have something like that? Should have a generics folder in there with a couple panels in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we'll kind of get into like what a panel is and kind of how it works first, and then we'll get into the materials because that goes kind of hand in hand with panels. So one thing I just want to make sure you guys have set first is if you want to come up to your options, the gear kind of in the top middle there. So one thing we're gonna might want to make sure we have set. So if we come into that and we're in our system options, we can come down to display on the left side. And inside of that, we just want to make sure we have this dynamic highlight from graphics view option checked. Does everyone have that selected right now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're just going to make sure that's checked. And basically what that's going to allow us to do is, since SWOOD library uses a lot of drag and dropping, it's going to allow you to do the drag and drop from the library into the viewing area. So we can, if we click on the generic panel, that's what we're going to look at first here. We can either open it by dragging it into the screen, or we could right click it and select edit. And basically what that's going to do is just open it up in our main viewing area.
All right. When you clicked on generic, I see there was a little pop-up down on the bottom, a view of it. Oh, there it is. Got it.
Yes, you can see that the arrow might be
Yeah.
covering that. You can drag it to
All right.
be able to view it.
And you dragged it into the view.
Yep. So, so this is just kind of our, like it's saying, generic panel. If we want to create any other panels, we can.
Are we
We can
trying to
always.
make a derived part?
You say derived part?
That's what I got on my screen when you dragged it into the main display.
Let's try that. See if I get the same thing.
Yeah, I don't get that. I get a question here.
What does it say?
Are you trying to make a derived part?
Go ahead and click no. See what that does.
Okay. I have what you have.
And that's when you dragged it in.
Yes.
Curious, if you close it again and do the right click edit, does it do the same thing?
Okay, hang on a second. No.
Okay.
Mine just did the same thing. I right clicked the first time and I dragged it, and mine does the derived part as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I would just go ahead and say no to that if it asks you. Okay. And then if we all get this open, you should kind of see that we'll get all of our toolbars that come up on the top here. And I can see I have some stuff repeating on mine. So I'm actually going to show you how we can just clean these up a little bit if we need to. So you can see I have SWOD Cam in here twice for whatever reason. But that's an easy fix. If I just right click on kind of this blank gray area to the right of the commands here, I can go and do customize. And if I click that, all my toolbars are going to change. So it'll show any ones that are hidden right now that aren't displayed in this dark red kind of color. It might look a little different depending on how your display settings are. But if we need to add any of those in, we can kind of just right click and select show if we want those to show up. But in my case, I'm going to get rid of this, some of these duplicate ones. So I'm going to get rid of SolidWorks Cam here. And the way we can do that is just right click and delete it, because we're not going to be using that. And I'm just going to get rid of the second SWOD Cam tab just by hitting delete. And that'll just allow us to kind of clean up our toolbars here. So now at the end, I just have SWOD Cam and SWOD Design. Are you guys having the same toolbars as well?
I don't think there's any duplicated on mine. I don't know.
Yeah, I had duplicates are
Okay.
gone.
Okay. Yeah, we're just going to want to make sure we have SWOD Design set. And then, yeah, so another thing we can do with that, so I'm going to say OK in this customize window, and it's going to save what I just did. So you can see if I do that, it got rid of a bunch of these tabs here now. And I'm actually just going to go in and just delete out the SWOD Cam one, because we're not going to be using that for this training. So I'm actually just going to take that out. And no worries with that. If you delete one out that you didn't mean to, you can always go into the new tab and add a tab back in. So the one I deleted, SWOD Cam, is an option for me to add back in. So I can always do that if I need to. But I'm just going to leave that one off for now. And then another trick that we can use for this is let's say we're looking at our, let's say for example, our SWOOD Design tab or something like that, and we lose some of our buttons here. So it's not having all the same commands we want it to. There's a couple ways we can fix that if that becomes an issue. So we can come back into the customize window here. And one thing we could do if we want to reset the tab or just refresh the commands entirely is just delete the tab out. And then we can select to add it back in. And what that'll do, if we say OK, is, yeah, just basically it kind of reset my commands here. You see it added a couple more buttons in here. And then another way we can customize that if we need to is in the same customize menu. If we're in this window here, we can come into the command section, and pretty much every SolidWorks command is going to come up here. So right now we have selected all, so this is pretty much everything. You can see a lot of the SWOOD Design and SWOOD Cam stuff comes up at the bottom. So yeah, that'll come up down there. And then if we scroll down on the left, drop down here, we can come down to SWOOD Design and it'll show all of the commands associated with SWOOD Design in here. So if I need to, let's say, add anything into here that isn't coming up, which looks like everything's on mine coming up in my case, but let's say I wanted to add a command in, I can just pretty much just drag and drop it into the toolbar and the command will come up. And if I want to get rid of it, I can just drag it back into this window here. So you can see I put one in by just dragging and dropping, and I can take it out by dragging and dropping in reverse, basically. So that's something we can use if we need to customize our commands or anything. So I'll go ahead and say OK to that.
Wait, how do you get these SWOOD Design back into like little tabs? Because mine's now a floating window. That because when I do because I deleted it to try to get more of those options back.
Okay, so I'm just right clicking in the blank space of the toolbar and then selecting customize. And then, so if you don't have SWOOD Design, you can add it by going right clicking on new tab and selecting add tab, and you can just hover over and find SWOOD Design in here, but I already have it, so yeah, it's not showing up.
Okay,
in
it
there.
worked. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, that should come in like that. We'll just say okay, and now we should have SWOOD Design, which is going to be the main thing we're working with here. So, all right. So yeah, we just opened up this panel here, and this is pretty much going to just look like a standard SolidWorks boss extrude. I mean, that's basically all it is. Basically, it's just set up a little bit differently to work as a SWOOD panel. So we can see we have a couple extra planes rather than the standard here. So usually with SolidWorks, you have your top, front, and right or left plane. And basically with this is we have basically 6 more planes added on top of that. So we have 3 added so that we basically have a plane associated with each face of the panel. So like all 6 sides more or less. So we have our, our top and bottom, left and right, front and back. But then they also added in a couple or a few here for like half thicknesses, half lengths. So you can see like half thickness just comes up in the middle there. So those can be useful if we ever need to like center the panel on something and use mates to do that. We just have a couple extra planes to work with that helps us with that. So you can see this is just a regular boss extrude here. But basically the thickness is being controlled by the material that's applied to it. So basically what the SWOOD panel is, it's just a SolidWorks part with a material applied to it. And in this case, if we look at the actual boss extrude itself, we go and edit that. You can see it's just extruding up to a surface. So in our case, it's just extruding up to the top plane. So it doesn't actually have a dimension associated with it. And that allows it to like be parametric, where we can change the shape, thickness, length, and width really easily. You'll be able to see that with the sketch inside of here as well. We don't have any dimensions on here. And basically how this works is if I come into my eyeball icon here and I switch on showing the primary planes, you can see, and I can come in and turn all of these on. You can see the ones in the bottom section here are all grayed out. But if I click on that and say show it, it'll show the panel up on here. And basically how this works is the lines in the sketch are made to be collinear with the planes themselves. So yeah, the sketch isn't dimensioned to anything. It's just tied to these different planes that we have here. And then the size is determined by the distance between the planes. So I can show you kind of how that works now. I'm going to go ahead and hide these again. I'm going to go ahead and turn these off just so it's a little easier to see. So the way this works is if I go, we'll exit the sketch here. And I'm going to come up to my file properties at the top. That's right next to the settings, basically at the top in the middle. You can see with this panel here, we have a couple custom properties added. Basically, they control the size here. So yeah, just as standard, we have this here. And we can see that the length is basically associated with the distance, and that distance is basically just the distance between the left and the right plane. So you can see if I go, let's say I double click on my, was it left plane? No, if I double click on the right plane, you can see we have a distance pop up here, and that's going to be our length parameter. So that custom property I just showed is tied to this distance here, and that's the distance between the left and the right plane. So you'll kind of see how that works. If I go on the double click on the back plane, you can see the distance pops up for our width here, so distance between front and back. And if I select the top plane by double clicking it, you can see we have a 19 mil thickness associated with that. And that's just the distance between the top and the bottom plane. So that allows us, since there's no like hard dimension associated with this, it just allows us to change the size really easily and edit this around. Another thing you'll notice here is that the z-axis is always going to want to come out of the top surface of the panel. And that's usually just related to CAM stuff, because when we have this, you can imagine if this was just positioned in your cutting machine here, your tool diving direction is basically going to be parallel to the z-axis. So that way, the way this is oriented and the way it's going to be oriented in the machine is pretty much the same. So that's why it's set up like that. Any questions so far with any of this?
Nope.
So this is the means of setting up our panel library then. We'll start with a generic and putting in thickness. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the thickness is going to be determined by the material that's associated with this. So you can see on the left side here, this one has a generic 19. And basically that just means it's a generic material with a 19 mil thickness. And that drives the extrude thickness of the panel.
Mm-hmm.
So your material is going to control your thickness. And we can kind of see how all of everything I just explained works when we go hit this edit panel tool here in the SWOOD design, and we can see that those custom properties we saw before, the length and the width, they can be controlled by these options here. So if I want to make this a little smaller, I could put maybe 500. You can see it updates that for me automatically. And this is also going to be really helpful when we get into frames as well, which should be doing mostly tomorrow. We'll be doing frames. And basically what that allows us to do is make an assembly out of a bunch of panels, and we can basically use these panels to assemble a cabinet. And since they're so parametric and the size can be changed easily, it makes it really easy to resize your panel to be anything you need to be. So like a shelf, a top, a bottom, left, right, anything like that. It's really easy to update. So we'll just go kind of explain the options in the edit panel tool here. So obviously we can change the size really easily, but you'll see with the thickness here, that one's grayed out because this is being controlled by the material. So we're not able to update this. We'll update it by changing the material, and that's something we can do down in this section here. But for now, let's just go through a couple of different options here. So basically you can control which way the top is. So this will allow you to control, right now our top is this face here, but if I click the arrow on that, it's going to flip it to be upside down basically. And then I can also click in here and choose it to be along one of the other axes if we need the z-axis to change. Usually that's not going to be something you want to do unless you're doing something a little more unorthodox. So right now we're just going to leave it to be in the standard along Z. And length direction is basically what we can use to control our grain direction if we have one. So this material right now doesn't have a grain, but if it did, it would be running along the x-axis. So the red one, it would be basically running left or right as we see here. But if we wanted to change that, and we can do that if we update the material, it'll show a little better. We can basically change it by selecting a different option here. So there's some basically standard 90-degree increments programmed in here. So if we want to make it vertical grain, we basically choose 90, and it just changes how the material is laid out on the panel. And that'll show up a little better if we change material down here. So you can see right now we just have the generic 19.
How did you get to this panel? I was looking away.
I'm just in the edit panel button right here.
Okay, got it.
That'll bring up this menu here. And then you should basically see these options here.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so yeah, if we look at our materials here, I'll just kind of show what each of these buttons do here. So right now you can see there's 3 of these like sections highlighted here. Right now we're on the center one, which is our main material. This is what you're going to see most of the time. So this basically dictates what the core material is, but we also have the option with these buttons on the left or right to control if there's a laminate applied on top or bottom. So basically, we'll get into this when we look at materials, which we're going to do next, but there's a few different categories of materials. So most of what you're going to be working with is just a main material, but then we can also set up laminates, which is basically just a thinner version of your regular material that can be applied on top or bottom of a panel. So this would be something you would use maybe if you're like laying up panels in-house. I don't know if that's something any of you guys do, or if it's more like, you just order a material with the top and bottom already applied. Is that something you guys do, like post lam or things like that? Okay. Yeah, so this gives you the option if you want to like kind of customize your panel. Basically, we're like making a sandwich now. Like we could choose to add a laminate on top. We could do a different laminate on bottom. And basically with that, if I select top laminate, it'll just allow me to go into this arrow here and select a material from the material library here. So we can show how to do that and how that works a little more when we do materials, but that's how you can add it into your panel and customize it in here. Yeah, everyone good with that so far?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so you can see we have our material here. That's just the generic one that is applied. I can change it if I want to by hitting the arrow. I can select a different material. So let's just say I want it to show with a grain. So I'm just going to choose the one below it that says generic 19 grain. I'll say OK. And now you can see we are able to see the grain on this panel here. And it also shows the direction of the grain with the arrow there. So this
How
will
did you do
show.
that? I'm sorry. You just clicked the
So I
arrow.
just went into the arrow here and I chose the generic 19 grain. So it should be the one just below generic 19.
Okay. Oh, my pop-up window is still up, so that makes sense. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I don't get a window like that when I select it.
Okay, so there should be an arrow on the right side. Does that come up?
Oh, there we go. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So if we select that and then say OK with the green check mark, you should see something that looks more like that. Everyone seeing that okay right now?
Mine doesn't have the grain, but I think that's mine. I always had an issue with something just not like the material's not loaded up, but I'll just fix that later. But
Okay.
I do have the arrow and everything, which is great.
Oh, it's just not showing the
The
texture.
grain, yeah, the texture in the top.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Okay, that might be something you have to look at, but I don't know. I'm using the same data, so it should be okay.
Yeah, mine's like a black and white checkered pattern. That's what I'm getting.
Really? Okay. Is everyone not seeing the grain texture on there? Okay. All right. So maybe that's something we'll have to look at as to why it's doing that. But if you change the length direction here, you should be able to see the arrow change. Does that work at least?
Yes.
Okay. So
I don't know it's because I'm on standard SolidWorks, so I know that doesn't do textures right.
oh, so maybe it's a SolidWorks thing.
Well, when I selected a button on this length direction, now I have wood grain.
Mine too. It did the same thing. It just suddenly appeared.
It updated just then?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's fine then, as long as it's working now. So basically the idea with this is how you're going to change your grain direction. You can see there is an option down here now that I chose a grained material to select grain is vertical with a checkbox. But I wouldn't recommend using that because it's not actually going to change like the physical direction of the grain on the panel. It's more just like a cosmetic kind of appearances thing. If you want to actually change the grain direction, you're going to use this length direction option right up here. And then the only other thing we have with this is if we want to add an extension to the stock. So that's our stock extension here. So you can see if I add, let's say, 10 mils on here. You can see it just pops up this orange buffer around here. And so that's going to be our stock size. And then obviously our part that's showing here is going to be like our finished size. So this basically allows you to add in a stock if you're going to, or an extension if you're going to, like, let's say, cut this from a larger piece. But I think in your guys' cases, you are likely going to be doing this on like a nested sheet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think this is something you would really use, but you do have the option if you need to. So I'm just going to put that back to 0. Okay. And then any parameters that are associated with the panel will show up down here. So right now, the only thing we have for this is a description. So that's why you see that there. But yeah, so once we have that, that's our edit panel tool. So I'm actually going to go set mine back to be longer on the length than the width, just so I know which one's which. So I'm just going to put, oh, yeah, you can see I changed my length direction, so it actually changed which way, changing the length updated. So since I changed it to 90, yeah, so it just changed that around. Okay, so now, yeah, I wanted to set my length direction to be 0. I just wanted to show you can change the grain direction using that. So I'm going to have length direction at 0. I'm going to have my panel just be a little longer, so you know which one is the length, which one's the width, and they look different. Okay, so we can go ahead and say okay to that, and that is our edit panel tool. And so one thing I'll do that we'll probably want to do with this is one thing just to be aware of, if we ever right click on the topmost thing, there's always an option to refresh. So if we ever update anything in here and it's not reflecting those changes, we can use the refresh option here. And then we're also able to add folders under here. So I was just going to add, for our case, add a training folder in here. And I'm just going to call that folder training. Because basically we're going to want to leave this panel alone. If we want to make any new panels, we can just use this one as a copy and copy this panel to make a new one. But basically, with this generic one, SWOOD Design, if we ever add a new panel, it's going to call this one as the panel we want to add. So we just want to leave it as this generic option for right now. So what we can do is I'm actually going to close out of this panel now, and I'm going to select to not save it, just so we leave it as the stock configuration. And you can see it's grayed out because it still thinks we're working on it here. So we can update that by, like we mentioned before, right-clicking on the panels and selecting refresh. And then you should be able to see that it comes up white. Okay,
I
so
don't have a little picture down below like you do, but mine is also, I was using the folder from the previous thing, and it has this, the P1, P2, all those parts we were using. So that might be why it's doing it, but I don't have a little window showing me what's there, like a preview.
is there an arrow at the bottom like that?
Yeah,
Are
there
you
it
able to
is.
drag that up?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that should be all it is. Yeah, the other thing you're seeing is just a thing with the shortcuts.
Yep.
So yeah, there's actually something I needed to send to Alex. And we'll definitely be using it tomorrow, but
Okay.
one thing I'll show here, and I think probably during the break, I'll send you guys this design file for the SWOOD design, because we'll be using some examples inside of that when we get into frames and stuff. But basically, this SWOD library over here works a lot like just a file explorer. So we can drag files into it. So you can see, I actually have mine bookmarked here. But I'm going to send you guys this design folder, but I'll kind of show you how the shortcuts work for right now. So basically, we can add shortcuts into the library just by dragging and dropping from our, oops, I think that might be not connected. So let me go to my, sorry, I moved my downloads into a different thing, so I think that's why it's not working. So yeah, I'm just gonna bring this design folder into my SWOD library just by dragging and dropping. And you can see when I do that, it brings this folder in here with a little arrow on the corner. And basically what that means is that this is a shortcut. So this isn't actually in the SWOD library. It's referencing this from my file explorer itself. But that allows me to access files from that folder I dragged in just from the SWOD library itself. So you can see there's a bunch of stuff in here. I'll make sure I send you guys the right one. But one thing to be careful of when we do shortcuts like this is if I ever need to remove the shortcut, it's very easy. I can just right click on the top level shortcut itself and I can select delete shortcut. And so now it's gone, obviously. But my design folder is still over here, same as it ever was. Nothing's changed, so I can drag it back in. The only thing we'll want to be careful of is if I come into any of the items under the shortcut, obviously I can access those, but if I delete any of those, it's not only going to delete it the way it's showing here, but it's also going to delete the files inside of the folder I dragged in as well. So we're going to want to be careful of that because you can actually end up deleting files via a shortcut doing that if you're not careful. So just want to make sure you're deleting the right thing. So just to reiterate, you can delete shortcuts without anything changing, but if you delete the files inside of it, then they're going to be removed from the root folder as well. Okay, so I'm going to take that shortcut out for now. And yeah, we should be able to go into materials in just a second. But before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that I make a copy of this generic panel inside my training folder so that we can mess with it and not worry about overriding the base one. So we can do that just by selecting it and doing Control C, clicking on the folder we want to put it in, and just do a Control V, and it'll paste a copy inside of there. So that's pretty much the easiest way to copy things over if we want to put a copy somewhere else. And I'm just going to call this, I'll rename it to our training panel.
Mine had a little file pop up with it that says dummy just above the copy generic.
Okay, so that will happen sometimes when it's copying things over. If you right click and refresh, it should go away. So that was right clicking on the topmost item and refreshing it.
It went away.
Yep. So it'll sometimes do that when it's copying files over. It'll just like insert a dummy file. But that's nothing to be worried about. That'll update as soon as you edit the file or refresh the library. So yeah, now you can see we pretty much have the same panel in here, but now this is something that we can mess around with and not worry about messing up the generic one. Yeah, so basically the thing I wanted to get across with the panels is that they're basically, the idea behind it is that they're controlled length, width, thickness is all controlled by distance between planes. So there's no like real sketches or dimensions associated with it. It's all kind of working off planes. And that'll kind of be like a continuing theme going through, is like a lot of things are built on planes. And that's basically just because it works a lot better when we need to make something parametric and have it update sizes and configurations and things. It just works a lot cleaner with planes. So that's how that works. And then next thing we'll go into is the thing on the very second to the right thing is our materials library. I'll point that out real quick. And so you should see something like that, where we have some folders inside of it. Is everyone able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So we have, so this is the generic material that was on this panel initially. You can see there's some other ones in here. There's even some laminates in here. So there's some exercises stuff there. But basically, when we're setting up materials for this, we'll be working in this training folder here. So the first thing we can do is get going on this new material here. So if I right click on this, it's going to bring up a couple options here. I can edit it, which is going to bring up our material library editor, which is the main thing we're going to be using for setting up our materials. Or we can do this collapse items thing, which just collapses all the files. Or we can select to add this to a favorite if we want to. So those will come up in this little star thing here. So any of our favorites, if I click on that star, will come up under here. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click on that new material inside the training folder and hit edit. And that's going to bring up our material library editor. So just make that a little bigger. So yeah, basically it just kind of gives you a rundown of setting up all the different attributes of the material here. So we'll go through that, but I'm just going to show these buttons on the top left first. So we have an option with the little page icon to do a new material. So you can see if I select that, it pops in a new material under the folder I'm working in. And if I need to get rid of any materials, I can just click the red X and it'll get rid of that and ask me to confirm. Any extended properties with materials we can edit with this window here. So just like I showed before, if we need to add an extra material or an extra parameter to explain our materials, could be supplier, any kind of miscellaneous information like that we can add in. And then we can import materials. So shouldn't be something you guys will need to use because you'll probably be setting up your materials from scratch here. But basically, the import thing brings up a file explorer, and it's looking for files with this suffix. So you can see if I go, it's bringing up my SWOD data right now. So my materials are inside of SWOD Design here, and then they're in this materials folder here. Right now that just has textures in it. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we can import materials with that, but that shouldn't be something we need to use right now.
Hey, that looks like the BDX is the same file type my Cutright uses. Do you think should that be compatible or?
That's a good question. It could be. It might be worth trying to import it and see what we end up with.
Okay.
It may work, but you might need to update the properties of the material in this menu here. So that's something we could try. Yeah, conversely, there's an export button if we want to export our material. And it'll save them as an, well, yeah, it looks like our only option is the XML. Okay, so I'm just going to cancel that for now. And then I know the guys at Liberty, we did CAM already, but there's a board library button in here as well. So basically, that'll just allow us to set up materials in the context of a board. So, you know, something like a 4x8 sheet of material, we can set that up using this button here. But I'm just going to go through the basic parameters of setting up a material first, and then we can look at that just after that. So I'm going to click on my new material here because this one is kind of just a blank slate, and we'll just go through how to set it up. So obviously we can give it a name. So what we can do is just make let's just make a 3/4 inch material or panel out of this. So I'm going to call this training 0.75 just for that. Optionally, we can add a description if we need to, but I'm just going to leave that blank for now. And then the next option is going to be the type of material we want to use. So there's a couple things here. I should have I have a little graphic here to kind of explain what the different 3 categories mean. So I'm just going to pull that in here real quick. Okay, so this is kind of how the materials are broken down. So the most common one in most cases is going to be a panel, and that's just a single layer. But you can have different textures and materials shown on the top and bottom. So a good example of what you might use a panel for is if you order like a 2-sided white melamine, you'll basically set that up as a panel with a white appearance on the top and bottom. And then a laminate, just like it says here, is just a thin additional layer that we can add on the top of a panel. And basically that's the process we'll use if it's glued up after, like kind of like setting up in-house. Is like you'll have your laminates that you can add to the top and bottom of a panel. So that's kind of what you would use that for. And then the last one is like a compound, which is just a custom, it's basically just like a custom layer we can set up. So maybe you have a material that you want to use that's made out of like a couple layers that are glued together. So maybe an example for that is something like a countertop where you have like 2 3/4 inch panels laid up together, and then you cut those out as one piece. You can basically use panels that you have set up and then add a couple together to make a compound. So we'll show how to do that in here. And yeah, so that's the 3 types of materials we have in here. Everyone clear on that so far?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll close that for now. And so the first one we'll set up here is just going to be a panel, and we'll show how to get that set up. And so here, obviously, is where we'll put the thickness. So I'm just going to make this one 3/4 of an inch here. And then we can select if it has grain or not. So let's just give this one a grain in this case. And then we have some options for costing here. So we can determine what the cost is and then how that cost is determined, whether it's by volume, surface, units, or like linear costing. So probably if you were to use that, you could maybe use it in the context of like a unit, like maybe one board costs this much or something like that. And then we're also able to add density in here. So that way, if let's say we make a cabinet, we can do like a weights and properties on it and determine the weight of the finished assembly once we're done making it. So I think in a lot of cases, some of the exercises, they'll have you put a density in here and then build something and then do the mass properties evaluation to see what the finished weight is to make sure you made the example properly. And that's something I can send you guys for you guys to work after. There's some validation exercises that they go through that does some of these things. But I'm just going to leave this density at 0 for now for our example. And then thickness calibration is basically allows us to add a little bit of a tolerance to the thickness of the panel. So let's say we're, ordering in like 3/4 inch plywood or something, but maybe sometimes it comes in at like 0.74 or 0.745. We can kind of add a minimum thickness tolerance so that even if the material is a little thinner, it'll still pick up that thickness as what we want. Okay. And the next thing in line is just the appearances. So the first line is going to control the appearance of like the center of the material. So you can see on this one, you see the center material is this kind of like particle board texture on the edge. So that's what this is. So we can choose a color if we want it to come in like that, or we can choose a texture. And we can select a texture. There should be a textures folder that comes up if we select this little folder icon over here. And so a lot of what they use for these generic materials is just the chipboard texture. But there's all kinds of things in here we could use. We could do, we could do something like one of these grained ones. Yeah, a lot of these are in French, so you might just want to like click on it as a preview to make sure it's the thing you want. Yeah, but I think for our example, I was going to set up something like a plywood type of thing. So I'm just trying to find something that looks sort of like that. I think that one right there might be good. So I'm going to say OK to that. And you can see now next to my training material over here, it kind of shows this little preview. So now it shows that we have a kind of a center material texture coming in there. And then, so yeah, we have a couple of options with that. We can kind of change the texture height and direction if we need to, but I'm going to leave those as standard for now. And then we can, yeah, so now we can determine what the top and bottom colors or materials are. So you can see on our generic panel here, we had a blue top and I believe it's a white bottom. But for this case here, since we selected this to be a grained material, I'm going to choose a texture for our top that has a grain. So we'll come into that folder icon again. And yeah, just going to come in with that one there, I think should be fine. And then we can do the same thing on the bottom as well. We can choose a texture. So let's say we have I chose.
And this is just all like generic looks, like it doesn't affect the bill of materials or anything.
No, so like bill of materials, I mean, we have things like cost and density, so that'll obviously come up on there if we have that. Let me just choose. Yeah, I think that's what I chose before. Yeah, so most bill of materials things, obviously like your name, like it's going to be most of these things in the top that come up in there, like name, material type, thickness, things like that, density and cost. Yeah, these are more just like cosmetic things for looking at it in SWOD Design itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we got you can see if I hover over this, I got a top and bottom material, and I got like an edge center material as well. All right, and yeah, we can also select this if this is a part that'll be cut out by like a saw machine or something like that. I don't know, is that something you guys, any of you guys use, like CNC saw, anything like that?
Maybe like a
No.
beam saw or like a saw on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we use our beam saws here.
okay, so that just gives us an option to have this as a material that can be used on that saw. And then if the saw you're using has like a reference code with it or something like that, we can add it in here. But that's also something that's more set up in the SWODCAM stuff. So SWODCAM, I know I've done it with the Liberty guys here, but I know Alex hasn't done SWODCAM yet. But mainly SWODCAM is going to work with like point-to-point machines, like your routers and stuff like that. But we do have an option as well to send programs to a saw, and basically that uses like a CSV export type of thing that we'd have to set up.
Yeah, we kind of have
But
to do both. We do all our melding on like the nested routers and our doors and stuff on the beam saw, so I kind of have to split however that works out.
right, because I imagine you send like just rectangular parts to the saw, and then anything with machining to the CNC.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. So I know Paul has been in touch with you guys about getting machines set up. That's all going fine? Everything so far?
Yeah, so far I've sent him everything I need. I haven't heard anything back, but he hasn't asked any questions, so I'm assuming everything's going good. And
Okay.
he said
Yeah.
the reports will deal with the CSV though, not I guess the CAM side. So I'll see how that works.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he's real good about getting that stuff set up. I know he's just been traveling lately and has been doing a lot of different post setups, so he might not have it be able to have that done right away, but I know he's back in the office today, so I might be able to just check with him and see how things are going with that. Or if you want to reach out to him as well and just make sure everything's good, we should be able to get in contact with him today.
Okay.
But yeah, long story short, that just is a check mark that allows you to send this material to be cut by the saw, basically. And then if we need to change anything with the grain angle on here, we can do that as well. So maybe if you have like a material that has a grain applied in like an unorthodox direction or something, like a 45 degree, you can add that in here. Um, and then any edge bands that you want applied, if you happen to want an edge band like pre-applied on the material, you can add that in here, but that's kind of a less common thing, but it does give you the option there if you need to. So that's everything we need to set up our basic panel. So that one is all done now, but we'll just go through and kind of show how the other two materials work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my training folder again and just hit new in the top. and we'll just go and set up this time we'll do a laminate. So I'll just go through how to do that real quick. So I'm going to call this one training laminate. And then what we're going to do in the material type is just choose laminate from there. And it's going to give us a couple of different options. So we lose some of the options here just because there's less things we need to set up with a laminate basically. So we can add a thickness in here. So maybe that's like a couple millimeters or something. So we could say like, I don't know, do you guys know what a typical laminate thickness is that we could put in here? I'll just leave it with that that one for now. And then we just have a couple of different options with how this will work here. So we have the option as standard to add the thickness if we add this onto a panel, or we can have it removed. So if we want the panel thickness to stay the same, but we want to add the laminate on the top without the thickness changing, we could have it remove it from the panel, or we could just choose to ignore it. So if you want to do ignore, you could always just have like a 0 thickness as well, and that'll just that way it'll just kind of be like a 0 thickness texture that kind of comes up on top. But I'm just going to have a thickness in there, have it add. We'll select a grain to be added onto this. And obviously we have some of the same costing and density options here. Probably, I don't know if density is something you would use for a laminate, but you do have the option there. So yeah, I'm going to do the same thing and just pick a texture as the face material for the laminate. So I'll just pick something with a grain that looks a little bit different. So maybe something a little darker. Sure, we'll do a mahogany. Let's go with that. And then same idea, we can change like the texture scale with that option there. And then the texture direction as well. All right, and then same options for saw and changing the angle if we need to as well. So that's how our laminate works there. And then the last thing I'm going to show is just how to set up a compound, which is the last type of material in the library here. So we'll go back, we'll hit new again, and I'm going to call this one training compound. So if we have that, we'll just come down to material type here and select compound. And you'll see that thickness is grayed out because the thickness of the compound is going to depend on the materials that we have stacked up inside of it. So we'll show how to do that. We can select grain here if we need to, but if we are using a grain material as some of our building blocks, that will determine if it has grain as well. So the way we'll set this up is we'll have this new option here called material layers. And everyone should be able to see that with this little pencil on the side here. So if we select that, click on that, we have an option to basically just add, copy, remove, or reorder any layers. So what I'm going to do first is hit the green plus sign, which lets us add a new layer. And what that's going to do is basically just bring up the material library. And we're just able to select a material for there. So I'm just going to just select my training 3/4 inch panel first and say OK. And you can see, I'll make this a little bigger so that we can see. So that's coming up over here. and it'll kind of give me a rundown of the basic options of it. So yeah, we have just the name of it. And then we have the option, if we just want it to not be like a solid panel, this could be applied to what I kind of mentioned before, like if we just want like a countertop where maybe the bottom layer isn't the total surface, is just kind of like a frame around the material, we can select that there, and then we could determine the frame width with these options here. So we do have that option, which is nice because I've seen people use that for things like countertops and things like that. But I'm just going to select this as a simple one for now. And then we have control over the grain direction, stock offset if we need to, and then we can give it an alternative name if we want to here. So once you have that, let's just say I want this to be, if I wanted this just to be 2 layers of this 3/4 inch, I could just copy that layer. And now basically we'll just have 2 panels, 2 of these layers stacked on top of each other. So if I want to do that, I can have it like that. And then maybe I want to add my laminate that we made on top. I can go into new layer, into my training folder. I can select the laminate we set up and say OK. And maybe I want this one to be on the top. I can have this selected and I can use this arrow to move it up or down. So now you can see I have the training laminate on the top there. And so that's how it'll be laid out. This will just be kind of how it's ordered from top to bottom. So we'll have the laminate on the top and then two 3/4 inch panels. So everyone good with that so far?
Would that be good for like, here we'll order particle board at 11/16 and then
Okay.
order laminate top and bottom. And it'll be pre-finished for us, but is that good to use a compound, or do you think I should just use a generic panel when we order stuff like that?
Uh, so so you're saying it doesn't come like glued up and you glue it up yourselves?
Well, it does come glued up, but we have to order it like in a very specific thing. Because if we just say, hey, I want a 3/4 inch panel with laminate, they're gonna send us a 3/4 inch core panel, and then it's almost like 7/8 thick.
Okay. And is that something you kind of order on the regular where you'll have that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a pretty stock item. So we have to first is saying I want a 3/4 inch with blue and red on the bottom. I need to do an 11/16 core panel with etc. on top and bottom.
Okay. So I'd say if it's something that's kind of more commonly used, you could set it up as a panel with just a different like texture or color on the top and bottom.
Mhm.
And maybe if it's less common, you could have those like individual parts broken out and maybe set it up as a compound, or you could even just have, your laminate saved, and then like we were looking at before, if we do the edit panel thing, we have control over what the top and bottom material is in here.
Okay.
Um, and that way you'll have this saved as the panel. So that would be in your panels library. So now if I, let's say, was in this edit panel thing here and I put, let's say, my training laminate on top, now you can see it applied that thin layer on top there.
Mhm.
So if you kind of know what those materials thicknesses are regularly and you just want to customize them that way, you could do it like that. Or if it's something you kind of more know what the thickness is going to be roughly when you get it, you could just set it up in the materials library as a regular panel like we
Okay.
did on this first thing. And you could always have a little bit of a thickness calibration thing here where you have like a minimum and then your maximum would be just the regular thickness. So you can have a little bit of variance there with that.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions on materials and stuff so far?
No.
All right. So yeah, so now we got that all set up. So we'll just look at the compound real quick just to see what we ended up with. So you can see the thickness was derived from the layers we set up. So we ended up with a little over 1.5 inches because we had 2 3/4 inch panels and then that thin laminate on top. So that's how it's getting that thickness there. I think I had grain selected for this, so I'll say okay to that. And then I have the same options for thickness calibration in here as well. And I can even kind of customize the appearance. I believe this will be on the edge appearance. So let me just select a color here. Yeah, so it looks like you can see that popped it in as the center material. So the edges of the compound are going to come up, they should come up in this gray. But we'll test that out and see kind of how that looks. So the rest of these options are the same. We've already looked over those. So I'm going to go ahead and click the green check mark on the materials library to save it. And I'm going to get out of this edit panel thing here. Okay, so
I had one
yeah,
question. You were
yep.
saving, we never saved any of those. You always went created a new one. So does it automatically save if you're working on a panel and you go and you hit the new button or whatever, it just saves it automatically?
So it doesn't save anything until you exit this window.
Okay.
So when you add new things, everything's still kind of like a work in progress until
Okay.
you click the green check mark and save it.
Okay.
And if I change something in here, like just change something real simple, like if I change the edge, say okay. If I click the X, it's gonna ask me if I want to cancel the changes.
Okay.
So if I wanted to just be like, no, I didn't want to do any of that, I could just say yes and cancel it. Or I could say no, and it'll keep me in this window. And once I hit the green check mark, none of this is really saved yet.
Okay.
That makes
So,
sense.
okay. So you
So
can work
once
on
I,
a bunch of them and then you hit the green and it saves everything you worked on.
yep,
Okay. Thank you.
exactly. And then the nice thing with the materials over here is if we have like a panel just like this one loaded up here. So I have my training panel here. If I want to change the material, I can do that really easily just by dragging any of these materials and dropping them on top of the panel. So you can see it changed my appearance a little bit there. So I have that texture on the bottom, different one on the top. And yeah, now if I edit this panel and look at that tool, you can see it's showing my grain direction and everything. And my material is coming up there. You can see it, the training 3/4 inch. And you can see that thickness is that one there. Oh, right. I had a laminate on the top, so that's why its thickness is 21. Because I think 3/4 would be a little bit over 19 mils, so that's why it's showing 21 mils as the thickness. Because we went into the top laminate under the materials and added that training laminate on there. So that's why you can see that thin layer there. And if I want to just cancel that, I can hit the scissors button and it'll just take that off. So that's an easy way to just remove that if you need to. So yeah, that covers setting up the panel there. Okay, yeah, I thought I had the same texture on the top and bottom. It just looked different because I had the laminate over top of this. So, yep, so we have that there. And I can even do this with the compound. So this will bump up the thickness, obviously. So if I take my training compound and drag that over, Now you can see we get a much thicker panel with that gray texture we have on the side. This is our laminate texture we made for the top, and then this is the same texture, that training panel we just made on the bottom. All right. Everyone good with that so far?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just going to change this panel back to the training material we did first rather than the compounds. So we're going to look at some, let's see, we should be going into edge bands next. So we'll take a look at that. All right, so edge bands are, it's kind of a lot similar to like the laminate type of thing where it's like a thin layer on top. But with edge bands, it's applied specifically on edges, obviously, because that's what your edge bands are going to do. But if we go into the edge bands library, which is the fourth button over at the top, you can see there's a bunch of generic ones in there, and then we have a training folder for us already. So this is going to work a lot similar to the materials library. We can edit it by right-clicking and selecting the edit pencil icon. And that'll bring us up to a similar menu, just with some different options, because we're working with edge bands, which are going to work a little bit different. Okay, so we have this layout is going to be a lot similar to the materials library. We have the option to do a new one or delete out another one. Same thing with the extended properties. If we need to add those in, I believe this one already has, yeah, it has some extra ones in here already if we need to add that. So it has a supplier string if you add in there, some finish options like a yes or no kind of checkbox thing. So that's already in there, and you'll see that at the bottom here. So the extended properties you can see come up at the bottom, the very bottom here with the, you can see for the supplier, I can enter in a string of text. So if that comes from I don't know, I think I said Wilson Art before. They make edge banding, don't they? That's the only supplier I could think of.
Yeah, I mean it's Frame Tech and all that stuff, but I think that should be Wilson does have their own line.
Yeah, just as an example. All right, so what would you guys say is like kind of your most common edge band? We could just kind of recreate that in here.
Probably like a 1 millimeter 15/16 tall.
Okay. Like just a white banding, basically.
Yeah, we could just do like a white generic 1 millimeter thick 15/16 tall.
Okay, so let's call that, let's call it white 1 mil, and we can set the minimum maximum width here if we need to. So you can see down here, obviously 15/16 is the most it's going to be, so we could just type that 15/16 IN and it'll do that for us. So yeah, we can basically go through here and kind of set these up. Yeah, you could do like cost per roll, basically. I think there's, double check how they, because they don't have a costing method in here. I have to check if that's per roll or per length. We'll have to double check that, but yeah, you have an option to do cost in there. And then kind of a new feature, I think, with last year's version of SWOOD is we can do an edge band over length. So if you want kind of an overlap on the edges, on the ends of a panel, you can set that with this option here. I don't know if that's something any of you guys would use.
Is that for like calculating like the end trimming for the edge banders, or is that just something says it, you're just saying I'm adding extra to this panel and not cutting it off?
Yeah, you're just adding extra, basically. So you could say add an inch on either end, basically. But I'm going to just leave it with 0 for now, just for simplicity's sake. So yeah, we can add a text reference in there if we need to. Obviously, the main thing is going to be your thickness. So I'll put in 1 mm. It'll work that in for me. You can see when I do that, it kind of updated this little graphic down here. So the green line there is going to be our edge band, and like the left and the right is going to be its thickness. So you can see if I put in like 5 mils, it'll get a lot chunkier there, but I'll put in the 1 mil for now. So that's kind of how the preview down here works. The yellow is your panel, and then the green is your edge band. All right, and then yeah, we can say if we want it to create a body for the edge band or not. So we can have the edge band added or removed from the material, or just none. And then stock offset is something I'll explain with this little graphic down here. I'm just going to pull that in real quick so it makes more sense. All right, so there's basically kind of a few different scenarios for how you would use the stock offset. So depending kind of how your edge bander works is how you'll set this up. So the first one on the left there is selecting a 0 stock offset. And what that'll do is basically it'll mill off the thickness of the edge band and then apply the edge band to that thickness so that the size of the panel doesn't change at all. And then our second option here is if we want to take a little extra away. So basically increasing the stock offset value will take off more material to account for the edge banding thickness. So yeah, like we saw here with 0, it just takes off the thickness of the edge band. If we add any more with a positive value, it'll take off more material. And in this third option, if we add, in this case, they added the negative for the thickness of the edge band. And what that basically does is just adds the edge band on whatever panel is there already. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So it kind of just depends how you want it to get it set up. As standard, it leaves the stock offset just as 0, so it'll just mill off the thickness of the edge banding and then apply it so that your panel stays the same size, basically. That's the standard option, but then you also have those other two options as well if you want to do a positive stock offset or a negative stock offset to account for that. All right. And then force stock exclusion is usually something we don't need to check. I'm just going to leave that one off for now. That's a less common option. And then the reference width table kind of lets us do a few different options for, we can do like a min and max width and do like a reference and cost associated with that. So it kind of lets us break down the materials based on like width and cost, stuff like that. I think it's like not very commonly used from what I've seen, but you do have the option to do that in here. So yeah, we'll have that. I'm just going to leave that off for now. Yeah, appearance obviously is pretty self-explanatory. We can either do our edge banding with a color or a texture. So I'm just going to choose a bright color just so we can see ours. So I'll just do a red. And then we have an option here to also do like shaping of the edge band. So maybe if it has like a kind of a round over on the top and bottom, we can do that with the first option here. So you can choose a chamfer or a radius here. And we have an option to do shaping on the ends of the edge band as well. And you even have options if you have maybe something like a specific, like unique profile, like maybe it has like a fluted kind of thing to it. Basically, what we can do is you would kind of, what this is looking for is a part file to represent the shape. So basically, you'd have a part file that matches like the cross section of the edge banding, and then you could upload it using this thing here, save it in here. I don't believe we have any in the in here to choose from, so I don't think I have one that I can show you. Oh, we do have a profile. This may work. Let me try it real quick. Yeah, so you can see this one has kind of this ripple thing. It has a couple different sketches inside of it that we can choose from. So I'm just going to choose that one. Oh, okay. So that is doing it 90 degrees from what I wanted. May need to change that. Should be coming up the other way. I'm not sure why it's going like that. Yeah, this sketch in here might just be in the wrong orientation. So I'm just going to take that one out for now. But that is how we can add a shape to, oh, sorry, I think I'm looking for shape, not profile. So let me try this one real quick. No, it looks like there's no shape loaded in there. Okay, so that's something we can add with this button up at the top, I believe. Yeah, so we can add, gives us some options to do shaping here. So we could just try out making one here. And yeah, so it's going to look for a profile to control the shape. Let me just pick this one real quick and see if that works. Yep. So let's say, see if that allows us to get what we were looking. Okay, so now you can see I have the shaping profile I added in here using that sketch applied to this. So we should get that kind of like fluted look that goes along the length of the edge band by doing that. I don't know if that's something you guys would use, but you do have the option to do it with this thing here. You guys ever use like a shaped edge band, anything like that, or is it just kind of normal stuff?
Pretty normal for us.
Okay.
Just a flat edge banding.
So yeah, I'm just kind of curious if this will take the right shape that I was imagining, but we can always just take it off to have the regular edge banding as well. And that additional shape, we'll point that out. That's just kind of an extra, probably less commonly used thing, but basically you can add like a cutout in the edge banding if we need to. Like, so let's say you had like a finished back or like a dado going through a panel and it like goes through the edge band. You can add that additional shape in here as well. So I think it's basically just looking for just like how we set up before with this button on the top here. What do we have? Additional, I think it's just this standard one they have set up for us. I'm going to say okay to that and see if we can add that in here. Yeah, I'd probably just want to check if that's something you think you guys would use, like if you would shape the edge banding specifically to like match a cut or anything like that. Is that something you guys ever do?
No.
No.
Yeah, I find it's pretty uncommon, so yeah, I'm not going to mess with it too much, but there is an option to do that in there. Then you do have the option to do edge bands, have it encoded before it's cut on the CNC, but I think that's usually a pretty uncommon option. That's not something you guys would do, would you? You'd probably do everything on CNC first and then edge band, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's probably not something you guys are going to do. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up all of those. We just have the extended properties at the bottom. So yeah, edge bands are pretty simple. You know, we just have our thickness is the main thing. Obviously, we can change the maximum width, like you guys said, is your 15/16. Stock offset is the other main thing, and then obviously your texture and appearance and everything. And I'm just gonna do I'll do a radius on this edge band as well. Okay. So let's say okay here. And now what we can do is we can apply an edge band to this panel just like we did with the materials, just by dragging and dropping it over an edge. So we'll want to choose an edge specifically. It won't let us do it on the top or bottom. So I will do that. And let's see, looks like it didn't create anything in terms of thickness. So let's go ahead and look at that again and see why. So we have a thickness there. You see here I have create body set as none. So depending on how I want it to look, I could have it add that thickness on top, or I could have it kind of embed its thickness into the panel the way it is now, so it doesn't change the panel size or anything. So I'm going to select remove here and say okay, and I should be able to rebuild that. Might just need to reapply it real quick. No. Let me edit this and see real quick. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, that updated it. So yeah, that's our profile shape we made coming in there, and obviously you can see the thickness. That's our 1 mil thickness coming in there.
Where did you said you added it. What did you hit or what button to get to where you are now?
So when we add
Oh,
an
right
edge
there.
band,
Right
it's going to come up in the design tree, and I just went to edit feature, and
Okay.
that just seemed to refresh it just by doing that.
Thank you.
And that'll give you a lot of the same options in there if you edit that as we kind of did in the edge band editor like we did before. But these ones here will only apply to the edge band in the model. It won't change the material library or anything. So these are kind of like standalone options if we need to change anything after the fact. Okay. So we'll say okay to that. Got, oh, yeah, so it's kind of conflicting with the profile and the radius. So it's looking a little crazy. So I think I'm just going to come and take out the shaping that I put in here because it's kind of not agreeing with the none. Yeah, so we'll go to none, say okay. And then I think if I edit this again, it should, yep, there it goes. Yeah, so now you can see we just have a 1-inch edge band or 1 mil edge band with a 0.5 mil radius on there. So the only other thing I'll show you with edge bandings here is that we can just continue to apply them just by dragging over other edges as well. And you can see when I do that, the way that they overlap is determined by the order that I added them in. So since I added this one first, this one is going to overlap ones. You can see because there's a line here. This edge band here is overlapping this one. So first one that goes in will overlap ones that come after it, basically, is the idea. So you can see that's doing it on that edge as well. And yeah, so with that, we've been going a couple hours now. Yeah, usually what we've been doing is, like a short break, like 20, 30 minutes, whatever works for you guys. You want to go ahead and do that now?
Sure.
So it's about, I guess, 10:10 your time. You want to just meet back at 10:30?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay. We'll come back from that, and then we'll finish out around noon for you guys. Do any of you guys have a hard stop at noon or anything like that?
Nope.
Oh,
Okay. So yeah, if we run a little long or anything like that, it should be fine.
Yep.
All right. Okay. I'll see you guys in a little bit then.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Into panels, and I think you said frames too?
Yes,
Or
panels and frames.
okay.
That's the two sections where we'll use those design files. And then
Okay.
also another thing with these is if you go into that folder, we have exercises, which is obviously what we're going to access in the SWOOD library, but we also have material in here. So there's the design manuals in there as well. So
Okay.
you'll always have access to that. And this will, you see this comes up. This is pretty much going to mirror a lot of the stuff that we're doing in here. So if you ever need to refer back to anything we've talked about, pretty much all of that is going to be in here as well. So this could be a good resource for that.
All right, so you're dragging the whole folder into panels. I'm catching up
Yes.
where you're at.
Yep. So I just took the whole design folder and dragged it into that first in the frames section and then second in the panels section. Because they're kind of independent of each other. We'll need to add it into both of them. Right. Everyone okay with that so far?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's just look at one of the examples. I'm going to go into the panel library first. We'll go into the design exercises and find the panels, exercises panels folder. And basically there's some panels in here that'll be used for a future exercise, but one we can look at for now is probably the whole position one. That'll just explain a little bit more with custom properties. So I'm going to right click on that and edit that. And you can see basically pretty similar to the generic panel we did before, but this one's got a hole in it. And this one's just kind of there to illustrate how you can add a couple custom properties in here and have them be read by the SWOOD design thing itself. So you can see if I go into my file properties up here, the whole position and size is defined by these parameters here. So basically what they did, I don't know how much experience you guys have with setting up custom properties. Have you all done that before, or
No.
okay, maybe we'll show. I could show how these are set up, like kind of from scratch. It might be helpful because you may want to use it in the future. But basically, the idea is that these properties that are added in here can be accessed from the edit panel tool. So you can see we have our whole position and our whole diameter here, but if I go onto edit panel from this thing and select that, you can see those properties come up down here. So I could change, let's say, the size of that hole. If I want to edit something bigger, if I want to move it over, I could say 100, that moves it over. So looks like the way they have this positioned is from this top right corner here. So you can see just by changing the value there, we can move it around in the edit panel tool itself. We don't even have to go in and change the custom property or anything. So what I might do here, and we'll just show how those properties were set up from the get-go. So maybe you want to do something similar to this on your own. We can kind of show how it was set up. So if I say OK, you can see obviously this is pretty simple part. We just have a boss extrude for the panel and then a cut extrude for that hole. So basically those hole custom properties are going to be derived from the sketch inside of this. So if I go inside the cut extrude and open up my sketch and edit that sketch, you can see pretty much how they did this. They just dimensioned this to be basically from the top, from the right, and then they have the diameter in there. So that's pretty straightforward. Sketch there, just a dimension circle. And so what they did with that is I'm going to exit this sketch now. And then I'm going to show how they would have set up these file properties here. So basically, let's see. So what we can do is basically they enter the name of the property, and then they basically have this tied to a dimension that's in the sketch already. So you can see they're pulling in a dimension from sketch 2, so it's D1 at sketch 2. So basically they're referencing the different dimensions in this sketch to determine how this property is positioned. So what they did here is, maybe I can do this again. We could delete this out, and what we could do is, if I have this window open, I can should be able to double click on my sketch here, and that should have the dimensions pop up. So I'm just going to kind of have it so I can see the window and the dimensions. And so pretty much all we would need to do is just type our property in here like they have, and then click in the value section. So the cursor's highlighted there, and then just select the dimension that we want this property to drive. So in that case, it's our position in the X direction. So I'm going to click this 100 here. Oops, hang on. Didn't pop in. Okay, let me say OK to here and then try that again. I think I might just need to reset it. Why is it not coming in? Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry, I just needed to click on I just clicked on the 5 to kind of highlight this. And then I clicked on this 100 here. So then you can see once that's selected and it's pulled in here, the value also comes in this column here. And that's pretty much how those are set up. So they just made the sketch, wrote in their custom properties, how they want to name it here, and then connected it to the dimensions in the sketch. So that all makes sense.
Sure.
So we can pretty much use that to drive like any number of things, like anything that's sketched in here that has something we can reference. We can use that. And we'll be doing a lot of this going forward as we do, especially a lot of our SWOD boxes and stuff. We'll be setting up parameters to control different measurements. So that'll make more sense as we go through it. But that's just kind of the basics on how they set up this example. So yeah, basically those custom properties show up in our parameters here under the edit panel thing. So that allows us to change those pretty easily. All right, so that is that example there. These other ones we don't need to go into too much right now. So I think for the rest of today and then getting into tomorrow, we pretty much have that all blocked out for learning about frames. So we're doing pretty good right now. So we might get into frames a little early and then we'll have some extra time to look at that. So I'm just going to kind of go through the basics of what these buttons are here.
I got
Sorry,
to
go.
ask a question, just stepping back here a little bit and summarize here so I can thoroughly understand this. A panel and material. You know,
Yep.
to me, it's almost one and the same, but what's the significance of the panel size? If we're working with 4x8 sheets of material, I'm assuming you're setting a panel up as a 4x8 sheet, you know, of 5/8 or half-inch material. Is that the initial way of doing it? Because I'm a little confused of what really is the difference between a panel and then obviously the materials I can see, but to me it's almost one and the same.
Yeah, so they're similar, but I think what you're talking about is more like a board, like a 4x8 sheet of material. The material isn't really have a size other than a thickness. So you would think as of a material as like an aspect of a board. So if we go into the materials library here and we edit that, basically all these objects we have set up here, they don't have like a length and width. They're really just here to drive the thickness of a panel and give it the attributes of the material we want it to have. The boards, however, so if I click on this button at the top on all the way to the right here, the boards library is, a sized sheet, so, 4x8, and then we apply a material to it to give it a thickness. So like I mentioned before, the material kind of drives the thickness of a panel or a sheet of material. Does that kind of make more sense?
I suppose it'll make more sense once we start dropping it into, you know, some designs here and see how this whole workflow works.
Yeah. So you mentioned like what's the significance of editing the size of the panel,
Mm-hmm.
right? In this case, like what we're working with now, it really doesn't matter that much. It's really just for like visual purposes, like if we just wanted to display differently. When we get more into our frames and stuff, and we basically what a frame is kind of like a blank assembly that we can insert panels and hardware and anything else into to kind of build an assembly, so like a cabinet or something like that. And when we do that and we put our panels in, we'll resize them inside of the frame to obviously get the sizes of the cabinet that we want. So the reason like it's so easy to they make it easy to change the size in this is because you're going to be changing the panel size all the time when you bring that into like a cabinet context. Because you might use the same material for your top and size, but obviously they're going to be different sizes. You know,
So when
Does
you
that kind
bring
of
it
make
into
sense?
those frames, you're selecting planes, and that's how it's adjusting the size of the panel.
Yeah, you'll use planes to kind of position your panel and determine things like length, width, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the panel, you can think of it as like a building block of, let's say, a frame, which would be like a cabinet. And then, like I mentioned before, a panel is just like a SolidWorks part with a material applied on it. And basically that material just, gives a texture appearance and also drives its thickness. So I guess in like levels of detail, like panel is kind of like the least detail, and then, or sorry, material is like the least detail, and then a panel is like a physical object with a material applied onto it. And then a board is like kind of like a panel, but it's set to a specific size with a material applied to it as well. So you have a length and width that's set, and then a material obviously applied to it that controls its thickness. And then, in this case, if we were, let's say, nesting this part and we wanted to cut it out, um, this would be like placed inside the context of a board, and it would get cut out from that board. So does that kind of make more sense?
Yeah, I guess it's making more sense. Materials, like you say, it's a material, and once the panels get put into a frame, and then you adjust that panel to the a top and bottom or back or what have you to get it sized properly.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, I think it'll make a lot more sense as we go through it too, because obviously we're gonna spend a bunch of time doing our frames and SWOOD boxes, connectors, all of that. Um, there's a lot of material to dive into there. So yeah, I think just as we get more practice, it'll become more clear. All right, so let's see. We did our panels and we went on the materials. We looked at edge bands. I don't think we really needed to look into profiles too much. I don't think that's something you guys mentioned that you would use too much. It's very similar to edge bands, but basically just adds a kind of an edge profile to a panel. So you can see if I go into my profiles library here, we can just look at it real quick. There's just some round over options, some groove options. So there's some things in here already. I'm just going to drag a 1/4 inch round over and apply it to this top edge here, and you can kind of see what that does. Oops, looks like it didn't go. Okay, that's going to bring in this kind of like cut extrude menu here. We have a couple sizing and positioning options, and if I say OK, should take off that. You can see it takes off that top edge and rounds it over for me. So kind of a similar thing to putting an edge band on a edge of a panel. You just apply this to the actual edge, not the face. So I dragged it over the actual corner edge there, and that's what puts the round over on it.
And these are all just visual, right? Would it actually machine that round over?
No, that's something that we could have machined.
Okay.
So I know with you we haven't done the cam yet, but that's something we could have machined out when we go into the cam section.
Okay.
So if you had like a profile cutter or something, we could just say, run that along this edge basically and cut that out. And we could have that set up as well. All right. Yeah, so, and then you can see anything like an edge band profile, pretty much anything we drag onto our panel here is going to kind of show up as an item in the design tree. So you can see if I click on that, I have the option to edit it, and it brings me back to this menu of when I first inserted the profile. And obviously, if I want to get rid of it, I can just delete it from the design tree. And that one's gone. All right. Okay, so yeah, I think like we were talking about, let's look at, just to fill you in on kind of the difference between materials, panels, and boards. I'm just going to come back to the materials library real quick and edit that. And I'm just going to show the difference between the boards here. So I clicked on this little folder icon, the very rightmost one at the top here in the materials library. And that's going to bring up our board library. So this is more in the context of CAM. So when we like say nest parts on a machine, we can select what board we want them to get cut out of. And this is where we would set up those boards. So right now there's a couple preloaded ones in there already, and we can just kind of look at how those work. So let's just look at the generic 19 one for now. So you'll see this is really similar to the material. The only difference we have with this is that we actually have a length and width dimension associated with this. So this will have a set size that parts can be cut from. So obviously we'll give it a name. And then the other thing that's important with this is that we choose the material that's associated with it, because that's going to determine the thickness of the board. So this one is driven with the generic 19 material. So you can see if I hit the arrow icon there, it's going to bring up my material library, and I can select the material that is applied to this board in this case. So this one's just generic 19. So that determines our 0.748 thickness, because that's equal to 19 millimeters. And then this one has, obviously that's some kind of metric conversion, but that's the length and width of our panel. So materials themselves inside of the material library don't get a length and width, because the length and width of the panels that they're applied to is driven by the panel itself, not the material. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. I know it can be a little confusing at first, but we'll get into it more as we go along. Everyone pretty clear so far?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Right. So yeah, I think we'll do like a quick overview of like kind of how everything works together in like frames, SWOOD boxes, connectors. I know we haven't gotten to those yet, so let's take a look at those real quick. So I'm going to come over now to my frames library. And all the way at the bottom, there should be a simple frame inside of this template here. So what I'm going to do actually before we do anything here is just going to right click on frames, and I'm just going to put a training folder inside of that frames folder. So I'll right click and add a new folder in there, and we'll just call that training. Basically because I want to leave this simple frame that we have in here the way it is, and we'll make a copy of it so that we can, if we need to change anything. So you can see that training folder is coming up in gray, so I can refresh it just by right clicking on the top and selecting refresh. Similarly, you can do that by clicking on the top and hitting F5. That should also refresh the library for you. So once we have that, I'm just going to select my simple frame here, just click it once, and I'm just going to do a Control C and a Control V, drop it. Oops, yeah. I'm going to drop it inside. I just selected the training folder and did a Control V to drop a copy in there. Don't worry about the dummy thing. That folder will go away when we update this, but I'm just going to rename this one training frame. And now we have a copy of that we can work with. So if I refresh again, that folder should go away. So then we can have something that looks like that. Everyone good with that so far?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, we can just select that training frame, right click it, and we can select edit here. And so we should get an assembly that comes up that basically looks like this. So if we look at this, on the left side here, you can see we have our assembly icon. So basically all this is at this point is just an assembly file with 4 panels in it. So these are pretty much all the same. These should all be the same as this generic panel here that we were looking at before. It's just a couple different sizes here. So the way these frame assemblies work, if I come into my eye icon here, and I go to show and hide primary planes, you can see we have a couple planes pop up. And if we look over here as well, you can see there's a couple, 3 more planes that are hidden right now. A little shortcut we can use to control these a little easier. You should see this arrow at the top of the design tree here. If we click that, it has a couple little shortcuts here, so we can use this one with the eyeball column and the frame icons here. We can toggle on the visibility on and off with those pretty easily. So you should be able to see that. And now we basically have planes on all 6 sides. You see them like that. So basically what these are, if there were no panels present, is this is basically just a collection of planes that kind of outline the size of the frame. And you can see we also have a couple sketches in here already. So if I toggle those on with the same column, you can see basically we just have these lines kind of outlining the size of the frame here. So you can see if I hide my panels, I'm just doing that with the same column real quick. This is the basis for pretty much every frame starting out. So we have this kind of sketch on the front, left, and bottom, and then we have planes that are tied to the 6 sides, basically. So this is kind of set up in the context of building a cabinet, more or less. So this would be like your basic cabinet. And what I'm going to do, sorry, I'm in the wrong tab here. I need to go into SWOOD Design. All right, so yeah, if we're in this, you can see we have an option here up at the top called Edit Frame. So if I click on that, that basically allows me to change the size of the frame. So obviously length, width, height, or sorry, they're calling it width, height, and depth here.
My edit frame thing is grayed out.
Try clicking in the main viewing area. Mine was grayed out too for a second. It came up when I clicked that.
Click the main area. Thank you.
Yep. So this is kind of similar to like our edit panel. This is just editing the size of the frame. So, you know, let's say I'm making like maybe a wider cabinet. I could change the width here to be larger. And right now I think these are, I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure these fields are hard coded in millimeters for whatever reason. But if we need to enter inch sizes or anything, we can always just type, let's say I want to make this 36 inches wide. I'll just type 36 IN and it'll convert it for me. So you can see when I do that, it bumps these left and right planes further apart and also updates the sketch associated with that to match. So I'm going to come back here. You can see if I have these columns up over here, I'm just going to click on the part icons here to have them show again. And now you can see we have those coming up. And so yeah, once we have that, we can kind of just show how some of these different things we looked at before work in the context of a frame. So so first thing we could do is maybe if we want to change the material on this, we can go into our materials library and we can drag and drop materials just like we did on the panels. We can do it the same thing onto different objects in the frame as well. So if I take my, let's just say my training 3/4 inch material and drag that on the top and let go, it's going to give me the option to add that material onto just that part. So you can see the part icon here, or I can select to add it to the entire assembly by selecting the topmost item. So you can see if I click that, all the panels will change to update with that material. And then another thing that kind of runs similarly to that is we have this option up here called Manage Project Materials. And this lets us kind of work from a top down in terms of materials. So you can see we just have one material for this whole assembly, the training 3/4. And if I expand that, it shows the different panels that that's applied to. So if I needed to maybe take that material off any of these panels, I can select which one and I could say delete. And it will take that material off. So now this one probably, yeah, so you can see if I look at this bottom panel now, it has its material is not specified because I removed it there. But I can always just put it back pretty easily by doing the drag and drop thing from here. Or if I wanted another, maybe I want the left side to just be a non-finished material or something, I can go into my generics and I could just put the generic 19, which is unfinished, on the left side. And if I just select the part here, it'll only change that one panel. So you can see now that one updates to be that kind of generic unfinished material. And so that's coming up like that. And once we have that, you can see if I go back into the Manage Project Materials, that now I have two lines of materials since my left material is different than the other ones. So my training materials on these three panels here. If I click on the generic 19, the left one just comes up. But if we want to change, if we wanted to change, let's say change this left panel's material from this menu here, what we could do is just go into our training 0.75. Let's say we want this left panel to be using this material. We can just come in here, click that panel, click the part, and now you can see it comes up in here as well. And now it's gone from the generic 19 because we changed it over. So that's kind of how you use that one there. And the nice thing about this is it also shows which direction is the top with this solid blue arrow here. So that's the top direction. And the way they orient these, they do it this way because they usually put the top where the most machining is going to be. So in a lot of cases, you know, you'll have things like holes for hinges, line bores for adjustable shelves and things like that on the inside here. So they make this panel, this inside face here, the top, because that's where the most machining is usually going to be. So that's why it's laid out like that. Same thing with the other side, it's just mirrored, the top and the bottom. Everyone okay with that so far?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, we can just mess around with this a little bit and kind of show how we can add panels to this. And then we'll kind of do some more in-depth examples when we do more frame stuff tomorrow as well. So what we could do here first is, let's say we want to add maybe a partition or a fixed shelf in here or something. We can we can do that by selecting create a new panel, which is this top left button here. So if I select that, it's going to give me a couple different options here. So the first option is just adding a new panel. So when I click this, what it's going to do is it's going to, remember that generic panel we were looking at before? Basically, this is the one that's set to be brought in when we select create a new panel. We can change it, but this is like kind of the stock choice. When it brings in a new panel, it's just going to bring in this generic guy here. So if I click the first one, which is new panel, it's going to bring in a panel basically on the bottom of the assembly. So you can see that's just on the bottom here. And with SWOOD, you can see this is going to look different than bringing objects into assembly normally. So with SWOOD Design, we have a bunch of different options for how this panel is positioned. So we can drag it around. We can resize it with these arrows here. And just like that, we can use these arrows to move it in any of these directions, up and down, left or right, front or back. And we even have these kind of arc segments here that if we click and drag, we can change the angle as well. So it's really easy to change like the position and size of your panel using these. But the other really nice thing about this is that these can be used to set up like assembly mates as well. So let's say I want this panel to be basically a fixed shelf in the middle of this opening here. What I could do is I could kind of drag these arrows to get it roughly in place. So you can see it's basically in there, but just kind of in front of our cabinet. So I'm going to use this arrow here just to move it in to the cabinet a bit. So now you can see we're roughly in there. And then what I can do with this is if I use these small arrows on these edges here, if I click and drag these and I hover over a face or a plane, it can snap to that plane. So you can see if I'm holding down left click right now, I'm moving my panel back and forth. If my mouse hits a face of a panel or something like that, it will snap to that and highlight in blue. And then if I let go of my mouse here, it'll come up with the panel it's snapping to in orange and the edge of the panel we just moved in purple. And basically what that means is they fix those together so that these are mated together to be coincident. So now if I was to,
I gotta say, oh, I was gonna say, I have no arrows. Like I'm able to drag the panel around, but I have none of the display arrows.
these little orange ones?
Yeah.
Huh.
And also, my box is still like black and white checkered, actually.
Okay, hang on a second here. So, okay, let me just delete this one for now. Maybe I will have you share your screen, and I can make you presenter, and you could share your screen if you could maybe look at what's going on there.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, so what do we got here? Can you click on that panel in front there?
Yeah.
Oh,
I can.
nothing comes. Okay, so it's all right. Can you, if you click on it and then hit the panel icon with the X on the left side, does that delete it? Sorry, not that one. The go and yeah, do create new panel again. Hit that one. Huh. Okay, what does that say there? Training panel. Let me see. Now, see under where it says virtual component? Can you click in there? That line under that? Yeah, that one. Click the arrow real quick.
Mhm.
Okay, go to generics there. Select generic and say okay. Okay, that doesn't really change much. If you click on the panel, does anything happen?
No.
Huh, that's weird. Try the gear icon under the create a new panel. Okay. All right. Okay, that's should be fine. You can say okay to that. Go ahead and cancel this one quick.
Okay.
Can you go into your panels library on the right side?
Yeah, this or the
Should be the third icon over.
oh sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Right click on the training folder. I just want to see. Can you go down to new on that drop down?
Yeah.
Okay. Your panel templates are there. Can you select SWOOD panel from the left of that? I just want to see what that does. Just name it anything. And can we edit that real quick? Okay. Okay. Are we able to give this some material?
Yeah.
Like if we drag. Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's weird.
you
It's
just
weird because it does like for a little bit give me like textures and stuff, but the moment I do any of this grain stuff, it just all goes away.
that's strange. So were you able to access the textures when you were setting up the material?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I got all these little textures and
Okay. Yeah, that's I wonder why that's not working. Can you go to the SWOOD data like files that we sent? I just want to make sure like that's laid out correctly.
yeah. Uh,
Okay. So let's see. Should be SWOOD Design we go into. Let's check. Let's check materials real quick in the materials folder. Okay, that looks fine. Textures folder, I assume has textures in it.
mhm.
Yep, that's fine. Okay. Well, I think since we're not really going to dive too much into frames today, what we
Okay.
could do is maybe meet with you after the training and see if we can figure out why that panel is not looking correct.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'm fine just to
Yeah.
watch for now.
Yeah, we shouldn't need to do too much with it right now, but we'll probably want to get it figured out before tomorrow when we do more frame stuff. Because obviously
Okay.
we're going to want to be able to insert panels and everything.
Mhm.
One other thing you could try is if you go back into create a new, or if we go back into that frame assembly that we were looking at before, rather than this panel here. And then, do you remember what made the textures come up before? Because I thought you said it did that for a
Well,
second, and then it like,
I'll say always the grain material that work. Like if I did a generic like if I just throw this, well, if I did a new part and I threw this
you
new
could just do
panel,
like the generics on it maybe.
um, like that's fine. Like I think that's fine. I can see the particle board, but the moment like this becomes one of the textured materials,
Yeah.
it just, you know what I mean? Like once I throw this on there, it becomes checkered.
So what about a generic material? Like if you go under generics and just do like generic 19 or 16, does that work? Just the panel, yeah. Okay. Oh, no, it's doing something.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you have the generic panel open? Can we just make sure that one's closed?
So I haven't used SolidWorks enough. Yeah,
That's all good.
just don't
Yeah,
save.
don't need to save it. We'll close that as well. That's fine.
Things built up.
Yeah, we'll save training panel. It's fine.
Sure.
Oh, I wonder if it's just. I wonder if it's like a past version thing. If you save this, does it update? Like save and rebuild it?
Just click this, or how do I do that?
Let's save it first, and then we'll rebuild it from there. So yeah, this is the training frame, so we can save that. It's fine. And then hit the rebuild light there. Simply not up to date. Okay. See if going into edit frame fixes anything. I feel like that. I'm getting a different checkerboard.
I'll say I am on SWOOD SP 2.2. I know the new update S.3 came out. I haven't got that installed yet though.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's something we could try if we might look at this after,
Okay.
just in the interest of time. But we shouldn't need to do too much with frames today, so I don't think it'll hold you up for now. But we'll
Okay.
just get it figured out before tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll set up a meeting for later today with you.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Was anyone else having that issue with checkerboard stuff?
No, mine
No.
looks
Okay.
just like yours.
No.
That's good. Okay. Just have to get that figured out. Okay, so I guess Alex can just watch along for now, but we'll just go ahead and do that new panel thing for now. So,
You share your screen.
oh, yep, sorry about that. Okay, so there is that. I'm going to go, there's a couple different ways we can do this, but I'll start with the basic way first. We'll just do it by selecting the basic create a new panel. And like I showed you before with these arrows, they can be used not only to resize, but make coincident mates basically. So even if I'm way over here, like I'm not even close to the panel there, but if I take let's say this arrow on the right side and drag it over to this inside face here, it'll snap to that when it comes up in blue. And then if I let go, you can see these two faces are coincident now, and they're locked in like that. So I can do the same thing with the left side here. I can snap it to that other side. I can select this arrow just to move it up a bit. And what I can do is take these arrows on the front and back. And if I just click and drag this arrow and hover my mouse over until it touches that back plane, it'll snap to that. You can see it's highlighted down there. And now it's mated to that. So you can see any of these red dots that come up here, those basically indicate that we've made a mate between some geometry on the panel and the assembly there. So the last thing I would do is just kind of drag this front one over the front panel there till that's highlighted, and then release my mouse. And now this one's sized to always fit inside of that. So even if I resize this frame now, these coincident mates will remain, and the size of this fixed shelf here will also update to match. The only thing that we haven't set right now is the height of the shelf. So there's a couple different ways we could do that. We could do it with your standard kind of SolidWorks mates. We could just we could use the half thickness plane to make it like equidistance between the top and the bottom, or we could do like a distance mate so that I can actually show how to do that in here. We can actually do a distance mate inside of this. So if I click on the top face of this, now I'm controlling where this top face is located. So if I click and drag this and hover my mouse under this bottom edge of the top, you can see it'll snap those together so they're touching. But if I release this, you can see now it put this red dot here in the center. And that basically indicates that there's a mate between the top face of this one and the bottom face of this panel here. But I can edit this by clicking on that dot, and it gives me a couple options here. So you can see right now it's showing that these are coincident, so touching. But we can also change this to be a distance instead. So if I select this kind of dimension icon here, I can select a distance. So maybe I want these like 6 inches apart or something. I could type in 6 inches, hit enter, and now that's set to be 6 inches below this face all the time. And another thing I can do if I want to cancel this whole thing entirely is if I hit this first red X, so the one on the left side, it'll cancel the mate so that it's like it never happened. And then if I click the green check mark, it'll save what I just did. So now you can see the arrow comes back up and that this is free to move around. These aren't mated anymore. So that's one way I can do that. I'll show the other way here by doing regular SolidWorks mates. So yeah, so how this create a new panel thing works is like basically nothing, there's no actual object in the assembly yet until we validate this create a new panel command here. So this is kind of just a virtual preview of what's to come, but there's no actual parts in here yet until we click the green check mark. So you can see if I click OK on this, it's going to kind of run a little script window where it inserts the parts, does the mates, and does everything. So if I click OK, you'll see that pop up here real quick. It'll kind of run through this thing here. So you can see it put in the panel. It put in any equations that are associated with it, and then any mates that we have associated with it. So once that's loaded and we hit the green check mark again, now you can see this part here has been inserted into the overall assembly, and that's our panel there. Is everyone able to follow along with that okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just show you, I showed the first way to do a mate inside of the edit panel or add a panel thing, but you could do regular SolidWorks mates in here as well. So let's just say I want to, let's just say I want to make this shelf like equidistant between the top and the bottom. So the way I could do that is just choose a couple references. So what I could do is I could say I want to grab the top plane, and then I'm going to control click. I'll grab the bottom plane, and then I'll come inside of the panel here. I'll expand it out, and I'm going to grab the half thickness plane here. I'll control click that. And then when I let go of my mouse, it's going to give me this little preview window here. I can do this, or I can do this inside the assembly tab. So I can do a mate here, or I could also come into the assembly here and select mate from here. And what's that doing? Okay. So what are we doing here? We just have the wrong planes here. Okay. Yeah, I think it just selected the wrong ones here. So I'm going to delete, I'm going to make these pink sections be the top and the bottom. And then the symmetry plane should be the mid plane of the panel. That should work. Let's see if that works for us. So I'm going to go select symmetry plane here, and then my design tree pops up in the viewing area here, and I can grab the half thickness plane inside of this panel here. There we go. And you can see that snaps it. So the top and the bottom are what the symmetrical plane is going to go between. Everyone able to get that to work okay?
I was not. I think I looked away from the screen while you changed to do something else here. I'm in kind of the same thing, and I click the top, the bottom, and then when I click the half thickness, it doesn't seem to be adding anything else. So I don't know what.
Okay, so what you could do is you could come into the mate
That's where I was.
command inside assembly,
Yep.
and then I'm in symmetric right now.
Okay.
So basically we're making sure that this plane is symmetric in between the top and the bottom. So that's
Mine
why
didn't
we're
have
choosing
symmetric
that.
as a choice, so I didn't know if you clicked something first before you did this, or if you just
Okay,
went straight
so
to the main.
let me go out of it and see what happens if I just
Okay.
don't choose anything. So I don't have anything selected right now. I'm going to go into mates and see what we get. Okay, so here's what it is. It's probably need to go to the advanced tab, I think it is, and symmetric should be in there.
Okay.
So
Oh yeah.
usually with the standard mates, it's gonna ask you to choose like two things, like stick these two panels together, make these two panels perpendicular, or something like that. Advanced is gonna let you choose like more than two things. So in our case of symmetric, our symmetry plane is the half thickness, and our pink planes are just the top and the bottom. So once we do that, it should lock it in there.
Okay. Mine are backwards. My pink one is on top, and the blue one's on the bottom. So I don't know. Let me just delete that out of there. So the blue one is top and bottom, or the pink one is top and bottom. Let me just flip them actually. Oops, hold on. And then, oh no, it's only giving me one choice. Mine, like I said, mine are flipped upside down, where pink is on top and blue was on the bottom, and I'm only able to select one pink. I don't know if it's
So wait, you're in advanced and
advanced
symmetric?
and symmetric, yeah.
Huh.
So it's just like yours, except my pink one's on top, the blue's on the bottom. So I don't know if I
This,
just do the same thing, but just with the other color. I don't know. I'll try that.
yeah, I guess so. Does it say symmetry plane there?
Yep, it's a symmetry plane.
But it's showing in pink.
Yep.
Okay. It might just be the same thing, but just with the different colors.
Okay, let me try to do this here real quick. Oops.
Could just be a SolidWorks like color setting.
It's not letting me select that half thickness for some reason.
So are you able to get to the design tree that comes up in the viewing area?
And part of the thing is when I'm scrolling down to the bottom to get to that half thickness thing, it like moves the part around a little bit. But yeah, I'm at the half thickness, but it just doesn't pop into my window there.
So it'll need to be highlighted in blue for you to add the.
That's
So
it
if I
is,
delete,
it still doesn't work.
Oh, it doesn't come in.
Okay, finally came in here. It's just
Okay.
it's like flickering back and forth between being visible and not. So, and then I'll try the top and bottom here, see if that works.
Okay.
All right, that seemed to work. It's just the colors are flipped.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably just a display setting or something.
And then I just green check, and that sets me up, right?
Yep. Once you hit green check, it'll establish that mate, and now that part is locked in there. So we can say okay to the mate, and just to make sure it worked, because this should be equidistant to the top and bottom all the time now. So if we go back into SWOOD Design and we click edit frame here,
Mhm.
we can make, just say for example, make it twice as tall and make sure that it updates. So you can see if I do that, the shelf pops up with it.
Yep, works.
Yeah, so that's how you could set that up if you just wanted to have like an equal height fixed shelf, or like, an equidistant fixed shelf. You could do it like that. Or like I mentioned before, you could just do the distance mates. Say you'd probably do something like that for like a drawer stretcher. If you have like a top drawer that's always a certain height and you have a stretcher below that, you could use something like a distance mate for that for sure. Um, and yeah, so we'll just show a couple other things here on how, just some basics of how frames work and stuff, and we'll show how things like connectors and SWOD boxes work along with it. So
Another real quick thing, the below that, the tree there, you've got the, under that part, it says mates and training frame history. Mine doesn't have the mates and training frame. I know you can turn it on. I'm just trying to remember where you can do
oh
that.
yeah, I'm not sure if I've had to toggle that before, so I'm not totally sure. Is there a customize menu thing? No, that's not it. You're saying this folder here doesn't
Yeah,
come
it's
up?
just not there.
Oh,
I know it doesn't really matter, but yeah, I can't get to those.
because they should come up down in the very
Well, it's interesting. Now it's
below.
the looks like the mates are there, but the folder is not. I don't know if that makes any difference. They're just up above everything else.
Yeah, you just don't have these ones. I mean, you can
Oh, I
access
have
the
those. I have
same,
those there. It's just that there's no folder above it that said mates.
this one here.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
don't know if that matters or not.
it shouldn't, because you can pretty much get all your mates from here anyway. I honestly never even use this folder, so
Okay.
that's why I didn't even know that it was there.
Okay. No worries. No
Yeah,
worries.
I've just done everything from down here usually.
Okay. Cool.
All right, so okay. Yeah, so we have that in there, and then I think another thing that will be good just to get a basic overview for now will be connectors. So that is the last thing before materials. The connectors library is this, is it the sixth thing over here? So basically how connectors work is they're looking for basically a contacting surface between two parts. So you can imagine, this panel on top butts into this side panel here, and, if I make this transparent, you can see this edge along here is a shared surface between these two. So what a connector is going to be looking for is a shared surface like that. And basically what we can do is, let me just find the example here. I'm going to go into examples. I'll go to pattern, and I'm going to find this one that's called pattern dowel. This will be a good one just to demonstrate. So we don't need to be, I'll switch back to just the texture mode. We don't need to be in any sort of view type. All we need to do if we wanted to add a connector in between these two panels is just take this pattern dowel, left click, drag, and just hover over the interference between the two until a red highlight occurs like that. And you can see when we do that, I'll zoom in a little closer so we can see a little better. You can see when I do that, it's going to highlight that intersecting surface. You'll see in gray, it should preview what the connectors are actually going to look like inside of there. And then you'll see a little preview of an origin widget on the center there. And basically by dragging my mouse with the left click held down, I can kind of flip which direction the connector is going. So in this case, these ones are symmetric left and right, so it's not actually going to change how the connector looks. But by doing that, I can kind of flip which direction it goes. Actually, let me do a different example that shows it a little better. So if I drag in this pattern dowel plus rastex, that should show us a little better. So if I click and drag this over, just hover over that edge, you can see those little rastex on the middle and in the ends there. If I flip this, you can see it changes which way they display like that. So you can see if I have it this way, it kind of doesn't make sense because the rastex is going to want to go into that top panel. So if I move my mouse the other way so that they're highlighted to come in on the top panel, all I need to do to insert that now is just release the left click. And what it's going to do is insert all of those connectors for me. So you can see that one's coming up in there now. And we have a couple options here. So just like I did before by dragging my mouse kind of left and right, I can reverse the Z direction, which was basically if the rastex go like left or right. So you can see if I toggle that, it flips it the other way. I can also do it with the Y direction. So you can see the rastex right now are coming in the underside of this top panel here. And if I click reverse Y, you can see now they're coming up, so they're shown on top. So you can adjust the position in the X and Z there, or sorry, the Y and Z. In this case, we also have the option to mirror, which will basically flip it in the X-axis. But since this one is symmetric, yeah, that one won't do anything because you can see in the X direction, it's symmetrical left and right, so it's not actually going to change anything. Yeah, so that's, we'll get into connectors a little more. I'm just kind of showing you a basic thing here. So I'm just going to say OK to this one to insert the connector completely. And now you can see we have those parts showing there. And if I come to my display style and do a wireframe, you can see the dowels in there as well. So yeah, connectors are going to be like a whole day pretty much because there's a lot to get into with those, because not only can you insert components, so like obviously this one inserted the dowels and the rastex cam bolts and everything. Not only can it do that, but it can also do machining for the dowels. So this one, you can see if I go back to my regular view and I right click on this parts, let's just select the top here and I'm going to do isolate. You can see not only did it put the parts in, but it also did the machining for the holes and everything. So it can do all that. It can insert components, and yeah, so it's a pretty powerful tool because there's a lot of different objects that we can access for connectors that are in here already, and then we can customize their position rules for how they're inserted and all sorts of different things like that. All right, so I'm going to exit the isolate here. So that's a connector in there. All right, and yeah,
How did
let's
you
say I
exit
wanted.
isolate? Sorry.
There should be a. So if I'm in isolate here, hang on.
Oh, I see it. It's at the little tiny window there. Sorry.
Yeah, there's should be a window up there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. All right, so yeah, exit isolate. So yeah, now we have a connector in there, and yeah, so we're just going to kind of go through. What we can do is kind of like build this into like a basic cabinet for now, and then yeah, as we go through the training in the next days, we'll kind of dive into how each of these work in more detail. But the next thing I wanted to show is just a different way of inserting a panel because we have a couple different options here. So what I'm going to do is come back to create a new panel here. And what I can do here now is we did the new panel to insert this first panel here, but we also have an option here to do new panel positioned. And what that's going to do if we click that is give us an option to insert a panel kind of in the context of a cabinet and how it's positioned. So you can see, let's just say I select this partition one here. What that's going to do is insert a panel in vertically in the center of the frame, equidistant between the left and the right, and full length, top to bottom, front to back, and everything. So let's just say I want this partition to be, let's just have it so it's in the bottom half here. So I could drag this top arrow here. What I could do is just grab that and drag it so that I hover over this bottom face of that fixed shelf there. Let go. And now you can see those are mated together. And right now we have the partition going through the bottom. So I'm just going to drag this arrow up so we select that top face of that bottom panel and that those are mated together. And then I'm just going to do the front arrow over the front plane and the back arrow over that back plane there. All right. And so that one's pretty much set. We just haven't set the left and right yet, but I'm just going to leave that alone for now. And I'm going to click the green check mark to say OK to that panel.
Can you set the panel as the equidistant middle thing that you did before from this menu, or do you have to go to the SolidWorks mate menu?
So with this really only gives you access to like the basic mates. So for something like that, I think you would just need to do the SolidWorks mate itself.
Okay.
I can try this out real quick. So there's another thing that we could do here, and we'll get into that when we do more frames examples as well. But we could also set this up. Like we could have set up a plane here that's equidistant between the top and the bottom, and then it would just be a matter of snapping the panel to that plane. So that's kind of another way we could do it. Have I done, I'm not sure if you guys have done the reference geometry planes thing yet. Have we done that at all?
No, I had a question about the plane.
Okay.
Would you be selecting the, for example, the right or front or bottom plane to position this new plane, or can you reference the face of a panel?
When inserting a panel or a plane?
A plane that you're speaking of.
It could be either one.
Okay.
Generally, I'd recommend basing it off planes because these faces of these panels might change position, like based on what material you use or how you have them set up.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually more reliable to reference off the planes, I would say.
Okay.
So yeah, this one is yeah, I'm actually gonna I was just trying this one out to see if I could do a different type of mate here. So let me go into here. If I click on the red dot, it's going to allow me to edit the mate, but you can see we only really get coincident or distance in this case. So nothing more complicated like the symmetric one that we did before. So yeah, that's something you'll have to do if you're looking for something more detailed from the SolidWorks mates, or I could also show you how we could set that up from the reference geometry instead. So why don't we look at that real quick as well. So if I come into assembly here, it should be in there, and we come over to this tab that has reference geometry. There's a couple different things we can do in there, but most commonly we'll be checking the plane one. So what I can do is if I select plane, it's going to bring me into this option here, which is looking for some references to base the plane off of. So let's say we were going to position this middle fixed shelf here and we wanted to drive it from a plane rather than doing the, the symmetric mate itself. We could just reference maybe this top plane just by clicking on that. And if I click the bottom plane, it should put one in the middle of those. Yeah, so you can see my first reference is my top plane. My second reference is the bottom plane. And with those, it kind of assumed that we're working to go in between those. So that's, once we do that, it's already fully defined, as you can see from the green there. So that one's good to go. So if I say OK to that, now you can see we have a plane in there and should be able to update as well if I edit my frame here and make this maybe back to the short height like we had before. I'm going to put 1,000. Yeah, you can see that plane goes along with it. So that might be a little bit of a simpler way rather than doing that complex mate of setting this up. So you can see I have my symmetric mate here, so I could delete that out and use this plane instead. So if I delete that mate, say OK, now you can see this panel is free to move up and down. That's the only degree of freedom it has. But I could just do a quick, easy mate between the middle of this panel and the plane I just made. So if I go into that panel here, grab the half thickness, control click that new plane I just made here. And select coincident. Now it's pretty much doing the same thing, where it's right in the middle there. And so since these planes, this panel is tied to this plane we have here, and it's all parametric, if I make this taller, it should update along with it. Yeah, so you can see it follows along there. And this partition I put in, since I made sure that it was linked to the underside of this panel and the top side of this panel, you can see when I update the height, this panel updates its height as well. That all makes sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think the last thing I'll do is for now is we'll just show a couple examples of how we can drag in some SWOOD boxes. And I'll kind of just go into what those are briefly. But we have a lot of different examples baked in here as stock. So there's all kinds of things from, handles. You can do doors in here, feet, drawer boxes, things like adjustable shelves. Basically, like what a SWOOD box is a modular component that we can insert inside of a frame. So let's say I wanted this top area here to have adjustable shelves. We do have an adjustable shelf SWOOD box that we could bring into here, so I'll show that here. If I come into the shelves folder here, shelves, the top one should be okay. So all I'm going to do is just click and drag this until we hover inside the area we want it. So when I do that, it'll kind of highlight where it's looking to go. So it's going to occupy that top half, basically. So if I release my mouse, no, try it one more time. Sometimes this can be a little finicky. There we go. Third time's a charm. So I drag it in there. I release my mouse. And you can see it's previewing what it's going to do. So it's going to put in a few different adjustable shelves. And it's going to do the line boring for the shelves as well. So the SWOOD boxes can be a really powerful tool as well, because not only can they insert, different components, they can insert panels. They can also insert machining as well, and they can be fully parametric to resize based on what you insert them into. So when I drag this in, the first thing it's going to ask me is where I want the extents of the box to go. So you can see it's displaying these different planes here. So basically what this is asking is, where's your left plane boundary? This one's asking where your right plane boundary is, where the front and back is, and where the top and the bottom are. And we can always edit any of these after the fact by just clicking in here and maybe selecting a different plane. So maybe you could say, we could say, I don't know if it would really make sense because it's going to run through, but maybe I could say my bottom. If I have my bottom plane highlighted here, like you can see in blue, if I select just this bottom face here, it'll replace that. And now you can see it's putting shelves all the way through this whole cabinet here. But obviously that doesn't make sense because it's going to run through my partition there, but that's how you could reposition the box or the extent of the SWOD box. So I'm going to put it back so it's just doing that top section there. And any parameters that are associated with the SWOD box will show up down here. So this one has some pretty useful ones baked in, like quantity of shelves is 3. I could set that to 2 if I wanted, and it'll update. Whoops, looks like it validated itself without me asking. So I'm going to go back in and edit that feature. Like I mentioned before, any connectors, edge bands, anything like that, SWOD boxes, they'll all show up in the design tree. So you can see that shelves one I just did came in here. And if I select that, I can come back and edit it. And it'll bring me back to the same window here. Yeah, so these are all of our parameters. You can dictate when the holes start drilling, how many shelves, any of the offsets for the shelves and everything like that. So yeah, we're gonna spend a whole day on SWOD boxes as well. So don't worry about this too much for now. But yeah, that's how you could insert a shelf SWOD box there. Another thing we could do is we have fronts on here as well, which basically does doors. So maybe I wanted doors on the bottom here. I could do one for each side of this. So I could say I want a single overlay door. All I would need to do is just click and drag that into the area I want the door to come on. Okay, we'll rebuild that. And now you can see it just popped a door on the front there. So we got a door in there. And I'm just gonna go into my settings and turn off those planes. So, okay. Oh, I think it's still showing the the planes I had set up when I was demonstrating the panel. That's why it's coming up like that. Let me go into I think it's stuck on this generic panel here. Not sure why that one's coming up with the planes like that, but we can always turn them off. It's weird, they shouldn't be coming up. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to worry about that too much right now.
Yeah, mine are up too, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I thought I had those It looks like it's supposed to be all turned off. No, it's not those ones. That's an option in the we'll just leave that there for now. The only other thing I wanted to show is like, you know, we have a door here, but obviously you can't really use your door without hinges. So there is some hinge SWOD boxes in here as well. And the only difference with inserting that is I'm just going to view this from the back side like that, and then just pop the hinges so that they appear on the door. So we have a couple in the hinges one here. I'm just going to do a bloom. Should be the clip top overlay. I'm just going to do the first one just to see how that looks. So I'm just going to drag it over that area with the door and have my mouse on the back side of the door and just, yeah, it's going to do that thing again where it doesn't go right away. Come on. Here we go. Just drag and drop it in there. Let's see where our hinges come in.
Is there a way to set up where, you know, you'll have a door that already has hinges, or do you need to do all those separately? And
So you're asking if you can have a door come in with hinges on it?
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's, yeah, you could probably set that up, I believe. That's just not something they have in here right now. Not sure why, because that, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different options for hinges, so I think they just kept them separated just so, you know, you don't have a bunch of different kinds of doors, you know, because they just have the regular door and then your hinges are where you have all your different options. So maybe that's why they did it like that. But you could certainly have hinges inside of this SWOD box. Like you would have to set it up obviously from scratch, but it's something you could do.
Okay. Yeah, because right now we're just kind of building a box, but technically you could save this and then you'll have a completed cabinet that you can always bring in.
Yeah, so so we were just working, what is this, training frame? So like once we have this saved, like, you know, we basically have a full cabinet in here. So you can see it puts some hinges on the correct side there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, we should have options for how many we want. Yeah, it's set up for left side hinges, 2 hinges right now. We can do the offset from the top and the bottom here and everything. You can even add, there's a checkbox to add an extra hinge near the top if you have like a really heavy door or something like that. That's an option as well. And when we insert these, it's going to do the machining for like the hinge cup and the door drilling as well. So if I say OK to this, not only does it insert the components, but it's going to do the machining for the hinge as well and the door. So you can see that there.
When you are dragging the hinge into your model here, and you're trying to select a face and it's a little difficult, you're just kind of moving your mouse around. Can you do some kind of selection with maybe your right mouse button as you're trying to, select the proper face to mount the hinge on?
So with this one, it didn't really matter which face I was on, because I think with this hinge one we have here, like it recognizes to put the hinges on the front plane, because I didn't even hover over the you can see if I delete this out, I had my mouse over the right side here and it still put them in on the front plane. So when you set these SWOD boxes up, they work a lot similarly to frames where you have the, you know, the planes for your front, back, left, right, top, bottom. and you basically just insert what components you want to have in this wood box and any machining. And so the orientation of it's going to match up with how it was created. So I'm sure with this one, it was made so the hinges are on the front. So even if I drag this in and I have my mouse on the right side or even the bottom, it should still put them in on the front plane. Let's see if I'm right.
Well, because the door has a gap built into it, so I'm just curious if it's selecting the back face of the door or what it's doing.
Yeah, so the where the hinges go is going to be determined by how they're set up in the SWOD box. So I think in this example here, looks like there's a gap built into the door. So we can look at what that is by editing the door SWOD box itself and see. Yeah, so it says it has a front gap of 2 mils, roughly is what that is there. And I would imagine when they set up this hinge SWOD box is that they made the front gap match so that this front plate falls on the back side of the door, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we have that, like we could look into this hinge SWOD box right now and just see how it's set up. So if I hit that, I can just get a preview into how it looks when they set it up. So this is what we're looking at, and basically we just have our hinges inside of an assembly. So if I turn my planes on, you can see it's just set up to have the hinges go into the front. And it looks like, yeah, it looks like they're just coincident with the front plane. Um, but if you wanted to, and you always had a consistent gap there, you could move these out a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you had doors that had different gaps on there, how it deals with that.
Right. Yeah, I imagine that's maybe like a parameter we could add in, so you could like change the position front to back based on door gap. That should be something we should be able to do. Right now, I imagine like this face plate here is made to be just coincident with this front plane here. That is what I would, let's see. This is the hinge. Let's see if there's any mates, what mates are inside of it. Yeah, so it's just going to be kind of a lot because they have a lot of different hinge configurations built into this, so it can get kind of into the weeds. But I think that's what they did there. They just mated it so that the front plate is coincident with the front plane. Yeah, maybe that's something we could try out when we do some SWOD box setup. Could try setting up some hinges like that. Because I do have a hinge example that I do, depending on if we have time or not. We're going to recreate just some basic SWOD boxes, like maybe drilling for a pull or something like that, where we could select which side we want the door to be drilled on. That's usually kind of something I start with, and then we can also do recreating the adjustable shelves and even doing something like this where we recreate a hinge SWOD box. So that's something we could get into.
I guess when you look at the model, when you made the door is looking at the volume of that cavity, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's an overlay. Those parameters are in there, and there's a door gap in there. And then when I go
Yeah.
into the hinge placement right now, I can see it's highlighting that volume, which is offset out the front of the front plane. So that must be how it's getting on the back side of the door.
Yeah, so yeah, probably an easy way to do that. If we go back into our training frame here. So yeah, you could probably just ignore the door gap and just have the hinges come up to this face, basically. And then it doesn't matter where the door gap is, it'll always just butt up to this. So it looks like that's what's happening here. So let's just check that real quick. So we go into this is our hinge SWOD box, and what I'm going to do is just edit that and make sure that the front plane is the same. Yeah, so you see it's calling the single overlay plane there. So that's referencing the door as the front. So that's why it's able to do the door gap and everything, because you can see it's sticking out there, sticking into the door gap. So that's how it's doing that. It's just using the back of the door as a reference. Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go with that, because then you don't need to set up any like custom door gap parameters in your hinges or anything. You just make sure they're butted up against that face there. Does that make sense? Anyone else have any questions so far?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much day one for us. Tomorrow we'll be getting more into some frame examples and how all of that works. This was kind of just a preview to show how everything can work together in terms of connectors, wood boxes, frames, panels, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, sound good so far?
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll set up a meeting with you, Alex, so we can look at that panel stuff. Hopefully get that figured out.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So that's all for today. I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow morning then, same time.
All right.
Alrighty. Thanks,
Sounds
Steven.
All
great.
right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.